bespoke radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
What up, what up? Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. Today's Monday, March 21st. 80 days into the new year, 284 days left. What is up, everybody? Did you have a good weekend? We did. We are live from a bunker somewhere in downtown Burbank, California. I'd like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States, hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. It's Fade to Black. For KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and KGRA, the Planet, I am your oh-so-humble host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? Feels good to be back in the chair. It always does. Tonight, we have very special guest. Tricia McCannon is with us. We're going to be talking about lost history. A little ufology thrown in for good measure. The call-in number is 323-825-5045. Tomorrow night, Brian Forrester is going to be here from Cusco, Peru, live. And then on Wednesday, very special show, Dannion Brinkley will be here. My goodness, what a week we've got lined up for you. I just watched the opening sequence. It was posted in Twitter, Lisa. The opening sequence for a film called Bigfoot with, now check this out. Check this out. With Leonardo DiCaprio, Morgan Freeman, Charlize Theron, Bradley Cooper, Hito Turkoglu, Daniel Day-Lewis, Brian Austin Green, and Jennifer Lawrence. Directed by David Fincher, no less, Fight Club. Written by Stephen King. Produced by Steven Spielberg. Those are the credits, right? And there is nothing on IMDb. Not a word. I went to everybody's links on IMDb, including Leo. Went to David Fincher, checked out Spielberg, went to Stephen King. No mention of Bigfoot anywhere. So, those are the credits. But there's nothing on the net, only on Vimeo. So, I have this, filmed in Auburn, California. I have the sneaky suspicion it's just somebody having fun, because I got to tell you, Daniel Day-Lewis getting credit after Hito Turkoglu, I just that I don't see. Bradley Cooper, Morgan Freeman, I don't know how they could have. Jennifer Lawrence right now makes more money than anybody in Hollywood, let alone Leo, right? So how could I don't know. So if you have, see, Allison. That sounds like, that sounds amazing. Well, I don't think it's real. I think it's somebody having fun. So check it out. The links are there. They're in Twitter. I don't know. Could be real, but there's nothing on IMDb. There's nothing about this being in production. I couldn't find anything anywhere. When I see something like this, I check it out. All right? I think it's somebody having fun. Could be wrong. Could have been done in total secret and nobody knew about it. Okay. All right. Check it out. Hey, Lisa, retweet. Hold on for a second. I'll do everybody a solid right now. Let me go back. Where is this? Lisa, where is your tweet? Lisa, I think it was Lisa. Somebody retweet it. I don't have the time to look this up. Just somebody retweet the link. And there you go. All right. I want to say to everybody, don't forget, when you support our sponsors, like Life Change Tea and Studio Dome, you're supporting this show. You want to support Fade to Black? The best way to do it is go and support our sponsors. That's the best way. Go and do it now. Life Change Tea, the best. I feel great. And it is truly a life-changing tea and everything that they have on their website. So help yourself, help the show, help support the show. Do it through our sponsors. Just go to getthetea.com. Our website looks amazing. Now there's a reason to go there, right? And I got to tell you, our world rankings really show that actually people are going to the website now. We had a lot of traffic before. Now there's a reason to go. The website looks amazing. Just go, click on Get the Tea, and the special that they've got going right now is 2 months of the tea. You get the Moringa for $5 and free shipping if you mention Jimmy or use it if you order online, the promo code Jimmy. Okay? Studio Dome, the Fade or Not special is going to run here for a couple of more days. They have a new special that is ready to go, and so if you want to pick up the surround sound system, you have a couple of days left to do it. We're going to start running a new special, I think, on Wednesday. And so just click on Studio Dome, $99, hard shell case, 2 surround sound wireless speakers, subwoofer, everything that you need, ready to go, $99, and free shipping when you use our promo code. There will be a new special running on Wednesday. I think we'll have it ready to go by Thursday. We're shooting for Wednesday, but there you go. Okay? And before I get too far forward here, the website is great, and our next 4 events are all posted up there: the New Living Expo, Contact in the Desert, Roswell, and UFOs Within Reach. Okay, all 4 are there. Our guest tonight, Tricia McCannon, is going to be at both the New Living Expo and Contact in the Desert. How cool is that? And her links are up on that right now as well. And I want to make an announcement. You ready? Bum, bum, bum. Our newest winner of a full weekend pass to Contact in the Desert is Tina Carpenter from Bodega Bay, California. Tina Carpenter, you are going to Contact in the Desert. Congratulations, and look forward to seeing you there and hanging out. Tina Carpenter is going to Contact in the Desert. All right. Yeah, we've got a few short weeks left, and then we head up to San Francisco, April 29th through May 1st, up in San Mateo. Looking forward to that. Stephen Greer, Nassim Haramain, Greg Braden, Scott Walter, who will be on with us here on Fade to Black next week. Looking forward to that. Get to hang out with Scott, Catherine Woodward-Thomas, Dr. Eben Alexander, and Karen Newell. It's going to be a great event up there. Laura Eisenhower is going to be there as well. I think Daniel Brinkley is going to be there. So that is coming up April 29th. I can't believe it. It's March 21st today. Wow, time is screaming by. But all of the events are over at jimmychurchradio.com. With that, let's get this show cracking. Today, Gary Oldman, 58 years old. Lots of great movies, but he'll always make the list because of The Fifth Element. Man, he's got some good lines in that. Shouldn't be ashamed of who you are. Matthew Broderick, Today is 54, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. That's the end of that. Not for the producers. No. Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Our dead guy's birthday today is Johann Sebastian Bach. 1685 to 1750, died at the age of 65. Of course, he was the immortal composer who revolutionized religious and secular music with over 300 compositions. And, of course, he made Yngwie Malmsteen famous. On July 28, 1750, Bach died at the age of 65. And a contemporary newspaper at the time reported, and I'm quoting here, the unhappy consequences of the very unsuccessful eye operation as the cause of his death. There were different rumors going around, but that he came out of the eye operation blind and then had a stroke, total blindness. But nonetheless, he died on July 28th, 1750. Johann Sebastian Bach, happy birthday. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio, Facebook, YouTube, everything's Fade to Black, JChurch Radio, easy to do. Go to the website, follow, like, and subscribe. You can also email throughout the show, Jimmy at jimmychurchradio.com. The sandbox, as always, is hashtag F2B. We don't bite. Get your tweet deck going. Come and hang out tonight. All right, let's see. Where are we? On this day in history, 1963, Alcatraz is closed and transfers its last prisoners on this day in 1963. Fader fact, Canada, our good friends to the Great White North, Canada consumes the most donuts and has the most donut shops per capita of any country in the world. And we have a lot of listeners right now in Canada. And they're going, yeah, that might be true. That could be. We've got a lot of donut shops. Is that true? You guys have, I would have thought, with all the Dunkin' Donuts and Krispy Kremes that we have here in the United States, that we had you guys 2-1. But apparently, we don't. Well, on the eve, here we go. On the eve of a court showdown with Apple, the Department of Justice wanted to cancel their hearing, saying it may have found a way into the iPhone of Saeed Farouk, you know, the gunman in San Bernardino, the ISIS dude. The DOJ has been pressuring Apple for help in gaining access to his iPhone. We all know I've been talking about this constantly. But in a court filing earlier today, the DOJ says that it no longer needs Apple. And I'm quoting here. This is from the filing today. On Sunday, March 20th, 2016, yesterday, an outside party demonstrated to the FBI a possible method for unlocking Farouk's iPhone. If the method is viable, it would eliminate the need for the assistance from Apple Inc., end quote. Now, right before showtime tonight, a federal court in California has approved the request to postpone tomorrow's hearing, with less than 24 hours before the two sides were scheduled to appear before a federal judge right here in Riverside, California. And for me, this is where things not only get complicated, but something went severely wrong. This whole thing should have been handled differently. And now I go into uncomfortable zone. Because now it seems that the DOJ, the FBI, and whoever else now has the keys to the kingdom. Who is this third party? They haven't disclosed that. Who is it? And I think that they should. I think we have the right to know. Who is this third party? Who approached the DOJ and the FBI? It is so important because this has now spun completely out of control. Who's the third party? Where did they go? They go to Tor. You know, they found some crack artist, you know, from the Soviet Union. I don't know. Who is this third party? And once this third party knows how to do this, or maybe they already do know, they've showed the FBI and the DOJ enough that they decided to back off of Apple. That's really important to know. And the other part of this, which I've talked about a lot, is this a one-time crack? If you remember, when I first presented my views on this a few weeks ago, I had said then that if Apple was doing a one-time crack and they did it at Apple and they kept the code and they just gave the phone back with the data back to the FBI, then we probably should never know about it. That's a private thing. That's an investigation with terrorists, right? Apple keeps the code, keeps the knowledge. They crack the phone, right? One-time crack. Now, the problem with the other side of that was the FBI requesting that Apple, like, maybe do it off campus and that the FBI gets to keep the code. And once they figure out how to crack the phone, that the FBI now possesses that knowledge. That's a problem. That should be known. That should be public. But we don't know. But now we have issues, and now we have things to discuss. Because Apple playing hardball with this and going public with it apparently forced the DOJ and the FBI to go to other sources. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but that's apparently what has happened here. And instead of keeping this inside of Apple and keeping it secure, now we've got a problem. Which takes me to the next part. Who gets to keep the code? Is this something where the FBI now has got a contractor, right? Third party? They're paying them. Somebody has successfully demonstrated to the FBI and to the DOJ that they can do it. So they're being paid. That's dark. That's dark in its darkest thoughts. And then, because they're paying a third-party contractor, then they get to keep what they're paying for. It's a service, right? So does that mean that Apple has forced the DOJ and the FBI to do this, and now they have the keys to the friggin' kingdom? And they can go and crack anybody's iPhone? Androids are next? I don't know. But it should have been handled completely differently. Now, the problems that I have on both sides, not on one side, on both sides, on the DOJ side and on the Apple side, is this kind of stuff shouldn't really be public. This is the stuff that we don't need to know about. But now that it has gone this far and we do know about it, I fault Apple for not just cracking the stupid phone from the very beginning, keeping it private, and getting the FBI the information that they need on that phone. There's probably nothing there anyway. Who cares? Crack it, throw the code away. Do whatever you got to do, Apple. But don't let it go to, because now we've got a third party involved that is not Apple. That will know, if they don't already know, that will know exactly how to crack an iPhone. And who is in possession of that very critical tech data. It's spun out of control. There better be something on that phone to make it all worthwhile. And I don't think that there will be, to be honest with you. But this is what we get in the end. I had said before, and I mean this, that was Tim Cook. That was Tim Cook's iPhone, and he was missing, and he was kidnapped, and the one of the kidnappers, it was his phone, whatever, is left at the scene. And they needed that crack. It would have been cracked in seconds. We really, 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 really need to watch what is going on. All right. Moving on. Let's get to some of the news that you know nothing about. Top daily fantasy sports companies FanDuel and DraftKings agreed to halt their business in New York today, beginning on a legislative path to make the games legal after a months-long fight with the state's attorney general. Now, New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman said that the companies agreed to immediately stop operating. That's right. All paid contests in the state of New York, done. An appeal of an injunction against the two companies is slated to be heard by the state's appellate division in September. The settlement means that the companies would not have to pay any fines or other penalties related to the gambling charges, even if they are found to have been operating illegally. Now, one thing that I've noticed out here in California, I can't speak for the rest of the country, and maybe we can get some response here in Twitter. Will be interesting to see. Have you noticed FanDuel and DraftKings commercials on television? They've stopped all commercial advertising. Before all of this injunction and before everything went down, it was FanDuel and DraftKings, every commercial break on every channel on satellite. It was like out of control. And then all of a sudden, it just stopped. And that's out here. So I'm just wondering, have you noticed that FanDuel and DraftKings have dropped off the radar? Interesting. A lawsuit, I reported on this last week. A lawsuit filed against Uber. Remember? From the murder, the shooter guy. Hold on. From the ride sharing company said that they were to blame for jailing him, who was charged with murder. It turns out that lawsuit is a hoax. The Kalamazoo County Sheriff's Office said this past weekend. The Sheriff's Office said officials became suspicious of the suit filed in the name of murder suspect Jason Dalton, who is currently jailed in Kalamazoo County, Michigan, after seeing the online filing. Now, the online filing part was real. That part that I reported on last week, all of that was real. The online filing, including a facsimile of the envelope used to send the suit, which had a Philadelphia postmark. The envelope in court documents was not a jail envelope. The postage did not match what the county jail uses, and the handwritten court filing did not match the handwriting that the office has on file of Dalton. Yeah. So somebody did the entire wasn't invited to the Christmas parties. You remember that lawsuit? Okay. Turned out to be a hoax. Somebody just filed. Now, and this is the thing. Even though that they have proven that it's a hoax, the sheriff's office said it's going to take a couple of weeks to get it off of the online section of the courthouse. Interesting. So it's still there. I went and checked. Google is selling Boston Dynamics, the YouTube famous team known for its animal and human-like robots. I've seen a million of their videos. Well, not a million, but a lot of them. Pretty cool. That can, run through woods and over sand and in and out of water. The unit has been up for sale as Google turns its attention away from robotics after showing a brief but strong interest in the technology just a few years ago. Google purchased Boston Dynamics in 2013 as a part of a major robotics technology shopping spree. At the time, Google was building a robotics division to be led by former Android boss Andy Rubin. But over the past couple of years, that unit has had its troubles. After Rubin left the company in 2014, its robotic units were plagued by Google's inability to replace him. Man, I thought there was big things on the horizon with that. I love those videos. And the technology was there. But without Rubin, they can't go any further. They are selling Dynamics. Unbelievable. A Seattle man, check this out. a so-called Christian prayer website and other businesses will return millions of dollars to consumers nationwide who paid for prayers. As part of an agreement, Benjamin Rogavi will pay back as much as $7.75 million to approximately 165,000 customers who were victims of Rogavi's deceptive business practices and several companies that he ran. Rogavi used a systematic deception in his operation of the Christian Prayer Center, creating fake religious leaders and posting false testimonials on its website to entice people to pay from between, check this, $9 and $35 for prayers. He collected over $7 million from consumers between 2011 and 2015. State police say a 78-year-old nun was caught shoplifting. Yeah, she was caught shoplifting $23 worth of coffee, snacks, and toiletries from a central Pennsylvania store. Troopers say Sister Agnes Panino was seen taking the items from surplus outlet near Berwick last Monday afternoon and was captured on surveillance video. Sister Agnes lives about 20 miles away at a convent in Danville. Shoplifting is a summary offense akin to a traffic ticket, meaning Sister Agnes will likely pay a fine if she's convicted. Sister Agnes. Have you seen the video? It's pretty nuts. Speaking to reporters at its annual media day, Lockheed says the company has made progress on hypersonic programs and it was producing an aerodynamic configuration which could reach Mach 6, or 6 times the speed of sound, enabling it to respond to security threats much more quickly than current fighter jets. The U.S. Defense Department said it wants to build what it calls a prompt global strike capability that would enable it to hit targets worldwide within an hour with conventional or nuclear warheads. In 2013, Lockheed unveiled plans for a hypersonic spy plane called the SR-72 that would fly at Mach 6, twice as fast as its famed SR-71 Blackbird, and said a missile demonstrating the new technology could fly as early as 2018. That's all I got for right now. We got a little bit more later. This is Fade to Black. That is all the news that you know nothing about. Tonight, Tricia McCannon is with us. We're going to be talking about lost history, mystery schools, little Jesus, little Mary Magdalene, Egypt, UFOs. It's all on the plate tonight on Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I'll be back with Tricia McCannon right after this short break. Stay with me.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio.
What's up, revolutionaries? It's me, Jimmy Church. Do you have an IRS or state tax issue? Well, I did, and I called national tax experts. My problems were fixed, done, fini, and man, I gotta tell you, it was a relief. National Tax Experts are a recognized tax office that services clients in all 50 states. Doesn't matter where you live. Give them a call. I'm telling you, they take the time to understand each and every client's individual financial status as well as their financial goals. And that's exactly what you need, my brother, when you're taking on the evil 3-letter. So, seriously, give them a call today at 1-877-909-5444. Again, 1-877-909-5444, or go check out their website, www.nattaxexperts.com. That's NATAXEXPERTS.com. Tell them Jimmy sent you.
Poor water quality is a major health issue, and it's only getting worse. Municipalities can't keep up, standards have dropped, and pollutants are increasing. Where does it all end? It ends by keeping the pollutants outside of your home with HydroCare's advanced systems available at Wave Home Solutions. No less than the best purification materials and processes have been developed by HydroCare to provide you with healthy, clean water for drinking, cooking, and showering. HydroCare far surpasses the competition in removing chlorine, odors, iron, lead, chemicals, limescale, and much more. Don't settle for less when it comes to your water. We'll take care of the toughest water problems for you, whether it's from a city or well source. Satisfaction guaranteed. For more information, call 888-997-WAVE. That's 888-997-WAVE. Or go to bestwater123.com. That's bestwater123.com.
Wave Home Solutions for a healthy, comfortable home.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, The Planet.
Hi, this is Chase Kletsky with Fate Magazine Radio, and you're listening to Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA digital broadcast station, where the Fade or Nots rock.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Massey, and you're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
All right, welcome back, Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. That's right. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Email is jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. Our guest tonight, Tricia McCannon. We're going to be talking about some lost history, a little ufology thrown in. Tomorrow night, Brian Forrester is here from Peru. And then Wednesday evening, Daniel Brinkley joins the show. But tonight, it's Tricia McCannon. She is a renowned American clairvoyant, historian, author, and teacher who has traveled the world in search of answers to the greatest mysteries of the ages. As a dedicated researcher and mystical symbologist in many ancient paths of wisdom, she is known as the mysteries expert. Trained as an initiate of many ancient streams of knowledge, including mystical Christianity, Native American wisdom, the Shabda teachings of the Masters of the Far East, and the Goddess teachings, she has led workshops in the transformation for people from all around the world. She is the author of Dialogues with the Angels, Jesus, the Explosive Story of the Lost 30 Years, Return of the Divine Sophia, Healing the Earth Through the Lost Wisdom Teachings of Jesus, Isis, and Mary Magdalene, as well as Ancient Mystery Religions. Her website is TM2012, TriciaMcCannonSpeaks.com. The links are over at JimmyChurchRadio.com. Just click on Tricia's name, take you straight there. And I would like to welcome to Fade to Black for the first time, Tricia McCannon. Tricia, welcome to Fade to Black.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. It's a pleasure to be with you and all of the wonderful listeners out there.
You know, what you get tonight, Tricia, you get the first-time guest disclaimer. And it's always an honor for me to do that. And the disclaimer is very simple. It's just you and I sitting on my couch, having a conversation as friends. And where we start, we start. Where we end, we end. And we're going to end as friends. Are you ready to go?
Yeah, I am. What a wonderful invitation. Thank you.
You know, thank you. And before I want to get to a couple of the basic things, because this is the first time that you've been on Fade to Black. And our audience is a smart audience, and Twitter's already on fire, and questions are flying in. But so before I get to some of the basic stuff, you just got I want to say this in the correct way because I don't want to get it wrong. you and I were talking over the last couple of weeks, and you were talking about this event that you were having in Atlanta this weekend, and with a bunch of guests over. And that got me to thinking, I kind of wanted to start there. What is it that you were doing this weekend? Because it sounded exciting to me, but it's also part of what you do. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, it would be my pleasure. This past weekend, I produced an event here in Atlanta for my dear beloved friends in Domenher, Italy. I've been going there since 1999, and it is a community of about 1,000 people who live in the northwest corner of Italy, about an hour north of the city of Torino, or Turin. And Turin is a very magical city itself. It had Jason's golden fleece in it at one point long ago in the ancient world. It's had the Holy Grail in it, and also the Shroud of Turin is there. So it's a very magical, sacred place on the planet Earth.
And so what do you guys do for 3 days?
Well, Domenher has a mystery school, just as I have a mystery school, or have had for the last probably 12 years here in Atlanta. And like me, they have students from all around the world, but they're in Europe, and I'm here in America. And the community itself was founded by a man named Falco. And Falco was quite extraordinary. He came from 650 years in our future. And his timeline, Earth had been destroyed by nuclear war, World War III, which Nostradamus talks about us having, starting around 1986, 1987, and ending around 2012. Well, clearly, that was at one time the prime timeline, and clearly we have changed that. Light workers all around the world, people listening to this, people who read it online, yes, you are part of what's responsible for changing the timeline. But Domenher was the major force behind that change, because they're a community of alchemists, magicians, and beings who work in the higher realms, the threshold realms. And this is, of course, what the great spiritual mysteries were all about. This is what my mystery school is about. What every true mystery school is about is our connection with our source, or with soul, or with spirit. And through that connection, connecting with the great divinities that are all emanations, of course, of the One. And so this community and I, their history is basically, they've been around for 45 years. They were completely secret until 1997. I went in 1999. I was the first American to go there, and I became their first liaison in the States. So for probably 15 years, I've brought teachers from there over to America, to Atlanta, to host them, and I love them. They're wonderful people. And my work is very aligned with theirs, and vice versa. So the class this weekend was something near and dear to my heart, which was past lives. So every single person had submitted about 3 months ago a photograph of themselves, which is what I ask for when I do readings with people long distance, their birth date and place and time, that information. And then they had gone to their oracles that they have, which are kind of like what I do, because I'm a clairvoyant who does readings for people all around the world, over 6,000 readings. And they were specifically going fishing for 2 lives for every person. And during the course of the Saturday and Sunday workshop, every single person basically had to sort of relive one life. And they don't just tell you the life at the beginning, they give you little clues, but you go through a series of sort of alchemical right brain processes throughout the course of the weekend to try to trigger subconscious memories of that lifetime. And then they give you the next little clue, and then the next and the next. So it was very interesting. This was the 5th time that I had done it. And every time, of course, it was a different life. And, I'm a clairvoyant. I know of about maybe 37 of my lives from my own awareness or deja vus or visions or dreams or clairvoyant, meditation work. But each time I've done it with them, I've uncovered a different life. And it always seems to sort of be the perfect life for where the individual is in that particular moment in time. So when I do readings for people, I go back and I don't just look at one life, I look at many lifetimes. And I also try to look at soul themes, blocks to our success in life or our happiness, which many times come from traumas in the past. And, when I first started doing readings 30 years ago, I only went maybe 3, 4, 5, 10,000 years back in people's histories. And then I made a leap about 4 years into doing this, so it's over 25 years ago, to where I found myself literally seeing people come in on spaceships, especially at the time of Atlantis. I leaped back like 20,000, 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 years. I found myself in completely different civilizations like Lemurian, Atlantis, and they were quite different. And of course, I was tracking the person that I was reading. So if they hadn't, come to the planet by then, I wouldn't have seen it. But if they did, I could actually see when they first arrived on planet Earth. And during the time of Atlantis, there was a lot of intergalactic and interstellar travel because Earth became actually a great star capital within the galaxy, like a shining jewel. And then, of course, it all went to, hell in a handbasket, so to speak, as we say here in the South. And, that timeline was broken. That world age ended. And, 12,000, 11,000, 1,200 years ago, 11,500 years ago, that's when we actually we dropped below the galactic equator. And so for the last 12,000 years, basically, we've been trying to pick up the pieces, trying to remember who we are. We had to reestablish society and history and knowledge had to be decided, who would receive it, because obviously in Atlantis, as great and wonderful and amazing and incredible as that civilization was for tens of thousands of years, in the end, like us, their scientists got away from them. And they started doing crazy things like our scientists are doing now. Things that make the earth sick. Things that jeopardize the survival of all living things on the planet. Just like we have our problems with fossil fuels and energy productions and GMOs and all this crazy, absolutely self-sabotaging stuff that's going on in our society. They had their own problems where they were trying to tap into certain reserves of the earth that created earthquakes and destabilized their planet, and everything ended for them.
Tricia, I'm getting a little crackle in the line. Can you change your handset or?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. No problem. Let's try this.
Because
better?
Oh.
Much better?
Oh,
good. Okay, good. You're such an audio, too. You have the most beautiful voice, Jimmy. It's just gorgeous. I bet if you have children, you sing them lullabies, they'll totally, be in joyland.
Yeah, I will do that for you now that you just changed handsets. So we'll do a trade-off because you have a great voice, too, and now it's back. There was just some crackle in the line, but now we're good. Let me ask you. So you said that you've done 37. You found 37 past lives for yourself. Did you find number 38 this past weekend?
Yeah, I did actually. It was an amazing life, to be honest. I mean, I think a lot of us have been everything from peasants to kings to sages to, washerwomen to janitors. I mean, we did everything. But this particular life was I actually was a queen. And this is the first time and like the first one I did, I was a poor Chinese sage who became enlightened in the mountains in the Himalayas, but our village was starving. So, I mean, let me tell you, I've had plenty of humble lives, so I don't want anyone to think this is going to my head, but this was very interesting. It was a life in the first dynasty of Egypt. So this would have been, historically, we had about, I think it was about 18,000 years when the gods reigned, the Anunnaki gods. And then it passed to the demigods. And I think they ruled about 9,000 years. And then when it passed fully to the humans, that was around 3100 BC, which is when our traditional history begins to count what they think of as Egypt. But the last of the gods to rule was Horus. Before he passed it on to really the descendants, the Shimshu-Hor. And the Shimshu-Hor were the followers of the path of truth. And those were carriers of the knowledge for a long, long time. That's how the original priesthood began. And it was actually a really, they were actually the real deal. They weren't just, people wearing dress-up clothes and playing dress-up ceremonies. They actually knew how to astral travel, how to soul travel, how to work in the inner planes, how to biolocate, how to send holographic images, how to make themselves invisible. Some of them knew how to walk through walls, some of them knew how to levitate. I mean, they were genuine sages of great wisdom. And so, yes, I'm sorry, it seems like we're kind of jumping around, but it's really all one conversation. The mystery schools, the eternal nature of the soul, where we come from, what the history of this planet has been, how the ETs have been involved with it, and this history that we all have as souls, as very eternal beings. And that's actually the topic of the new book that I'm writing. Is, as you know from reading my bio, whenever I write these books, it's like I completely feel like I'm immersed in that particular subject, because my books are not superficial. They're, the Jesus book has 1,200 footnotes. It took 3 years to write, and it's got over like 120 illustrations. So it's with timelines. I mean, it's really solid. And it's based on a lot of hidden documents most people have never seen. They don't know this, but they might secretly hope or suspect that these kinds of materials do. But the general authorities have sort of squelched the knowledge of these things, or tried to hide them or repress them or whatever. And of course, a lot of this was done in the first few centuries of traditional Roman Empire, Roman Catholic Christianity, where their answer was sort of our way or we'll send the military after you. So a lot of things have been lost in the annals of time. And unfortunately, as much as wonderful stuff as the church has done and continues to do all over the world, and as many wonderful people are involved in it, it went through many centuries of very dark history. And in the process of sort of trying to, gather everybody in the world to them as the dominant religion, they burned, like, for example, the Library of Alexandria that had 700,000 books and scrolls in it, including histories of Lemuria and Atlantis and former ages and enormous amounts of information. And, not only the Christians did that, but the Muslims did it.
Wait, I have to ask you really quick. Would you call yourself a historian first or an author first? Because you can be one without the other. And, the stuff that you deal with history and lost civilizations and the gaps in history are the things that fascinate me most. And that's all I do is research this, Tricia.
I love that. Well, we are definitely on the same wavelength. And I know how busy you stay with your radio show, and it's impossible to read everybody's books, and everyone has lovely things out there. But you really should read the books, because they're solid, and it's like all these jigsaw puzzle pieces. We've all been all these pieces have come out, and someone has a little here and a little there and a little here and all this. And I think those of us who are in the consciousness movement, in our hearts and minds and souls, we sense that there's a big picture, a real picture, and that all these pieces go into an incredible mosaic. And it's actually a multi-dimensional mosaic because, in truth, you can't understand the history of the planet, you can't understand the ETs, you can't understand what has transpired unless you open your mind to the possibility that the third dimension is only one of, I think Michio Kaku, the physicist, says 10 dimensions. That we know that they're nested inside of one another. And this is, of course, what the sages and the mystics have told us, and the scientists are telling us today. So, this is one of the things that this new book that I'm writing for Inner Traditions, it's called Blueprint of the Soul, and it'll be out probably next spring. And it's about what I've discovered through these 6,000 readings. And to make a very long story short, what I've discovered is that we are all eternal souls that have, let us say, come down through these dimensions. And each dimension we pick up a sheath or a body, just like we pick up a physical body when we come down here in order to even interact in this dimension. Without a physical body, we're kind of like a ghost. We can see things that no one can see or hear us mostly. We can't touch anything. So in each dimension, we get a soul body, we get a spiritual etheric body, and those dimensions, 6th and 7th dimension, we don't really have a mental body. We don't have an ego. We are able to hear the music of the spheres all the time, and we know where to go, what to do, and how to serve, because we're like little motes in the, the magical breath of God, if you will. Right. But there's a point that the soul comes down to the 5th. It gets a causal body, which is the body that records everything that happens to it, like a soul journal. So every life you've ever had down to the 3rd or 4th will be recorded in the causal body as personal experience. We also get a mental body, which is, beautiful, but more restricted than the soul body. The mental body weighs and analyzes and judges and all this stuff, but the soul body is able to perceive 360 degrees at all dimensional level, which is how angels actually are able to perceive. It's direct knowing, like gnosis. Grokking, as Robert Heinlein would have said in Stranger in a Strange Land. Do you remember reading that book years ago?
That is one of the best words ever created.
I love that word.
Yes, that is
I grok you. I grok it. Okay, something about it like rings, So it's like gnosis. I receive it. I understand it from the inside out. So.
Well, let me. The reason why I wanted you to talk about what you were doing this weekend was because of the two magical words there, mystery schools, and mystery schools. If it's a tough thing to research, it's something that we hear about in our alternative conscious circles, but to find hard fact and data about the mystery schools, which go back millennia. It's really, really hard to find out and separate fact from fiction there. What is your definition of a mystery school?
Well, the mystery schools were created to basically teach humanity about the existence of one divine intelligence behind everything, and to teach the spiritual laws that govern the world that we see and also the world that we don't see. And, one of the greatest teachers of the mystery schools, who really was responsible for setting up mystery schools all over the planet in virtually every country, was Thoth, the god of wisdom in ancient Egypt. And, of course, his original, Anunnaki name was Ningishzida, But in Egypt, he was known as Thoth. And for a while, he ruled Egypt, and he also, when Ra was ruling Egypt, he was like the chief counselor. And it's said that he created 365 books that contained all the wisdom of the world. And at the time of Clement of Alexandria, who was an early church father about 100 AD, Clement actually said that at the time he lived, there were 42 books that had been written by Thoth in the Library of Alexandria that contained all the knowledge about geography, math, physics, sciences, healing, herbology, law, governance, architecture, sacred geometry, and magic. And so he was a real being. The only 4 books that we have today that remain to us that Thoth wrote is the Emerald Tablets, the Kabbalion, which is great because that book contains the 7 sacred laws of the universe. And we'll come back to that in the subject in just a second if you're interested. I'll tell you the first law, which is a very cool law. And he wrote the Hermetica, and then he wrote the original Egyptian Book of the Dead, which was called the Per-Haru. Per-Haru means the house of Horus, or Heru, 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 the elder. There was Horus the elder, in other words, Father God, truth, and there was Horus the younger, in other words, the incarnation that the divine masculine took in physical form, just like Jesus was an incarnation of that, let us say, divine Godhead. Buddha was an incarnation of that Godhead. So the first law. Do you want to hear the first law?
Well, we're going to be hitting a break in about 60 seconds, so why don't we save that for after the break? But let me ask you this really quick, because you brought up the Emerald Tablets, something that I've read a couple of times, and I'm fascinated with it, and I want it to be real. And you know where I'm going? I just want it to be real. I don't want it to be fake. What's your gut tell you about the Emerald Tablets?
Well, what the Emerald Tablets are about Thoth's initiation, travels into the other world and meeting what he calls the dweller on the threshold. And the dweller on the threshold is the shadow self. Okay, it's really the ego. And all the machinations of the ego that keep us trapped down here. There's the usual anger, lust, greed, vanity, undue attachment, jealousy, pride, fear. We know the usual suspects, but there are many things that the ego does to prevent the soul from driving the chariot of your life, so to speak.
Right. Right. I think everybody should read the Emerald Tablets. Read them all at least once in your life. Let's take a quick break right there, Tricia. Our guest tonight is Tricia McCannon. And when we come back after the break, this is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We're going to get to that first law. But I had the feeling we need some time for this. More with Tricia McCannon right after this short break. You stay right there.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio.
Hello, I'm Katie, and you're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, this is Ray Hobbs here, repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black, on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA digital broadcast station.
Hi folks, Life Change Tea here, reminding you that colds and flus suck. Feeling lousy sucks, and allergies really can be annoying. What if you could change that? What if you could drink something that changed the sick and tired scenario? Well, you can change how you feel with a little help from Life Change Tea. Life Change Tea is a drink you make, you control, and you drink. There are 8 organic herbs that blend together and give you what you need to fight the flus and colds of this world. Less sickness is more relief. Life Change Tea can help with high blood pressure, constipation, high cholesterol, and much, much more just by drinking the tea. Read the numerous testimonies at getthetea.com. If you're tired of feeling lousy, order right now at getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Or you can call us at 928-308-0408. That's 928-308-0408. If you've heard this commercial more than once and someone's trying to tell you something, it's time to get well. GetTheT.com.
Imagine no longer being tied down to your computer, but having the freedom to take live talk radio with you anywhere you go. TalkStream Live introduces our first ever iPhone application. The talk shows you follow now follow you. And your iPhone is now the fastest and easiest way to stay connected to the best talk radio on the internet. Let TalkStream Live transform the way you listen to radio. Listen to live talk shows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Mobile talk radio from TalkStream Live. Now available in the iTunes App Store.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And this is Ari Gold.
We're of the Honey Brothers. Yes. We are of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And I'm Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
And you're listening to Jimmy Church.
The Revolution.
Hello, Fadernauts. Are you looking for the ultimate Bluetooth speaker system? Well, check this out. The Studio Dome surround sound system, featuring the Studio Dome 1 SD1 and the Studio Boombox SBB wireless Bluetooth speakers, is the perfect way to get surround sound without all of the cable headaches. With its own hard shell custom carrying case for taking your surround sound experience on the go. Each hard shell case comes packed with an SBB, 2 SD1s, cables, and power. It's just $99, and you use the promo code Jimmy, and you get yourself some free shipping. Once again, Studio Dome brings you the best deal on the net. Anywhere. Just go to the Studio Dome banner, JimmyChurchRadio.com, promo code Jimmy. Go Beckley Teppy.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black, across the globe on the Game Changer Radio Network and the one and only KGRA Radio, The Planet.
All right, welcome back to Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet. Our guest tonight, Tricia McCannon. I want to remind everybody, tomorrow night, Brian Forrester is going to be here. And on Wednesday night, Daniel Brinkley joins the show. Tricia, what, before we get to the first law, what sparked your interest into all of this? You had that epiphany somewhere in your life where you took that left turn. You know, what was that moment where you started down this path?
Wow, great question, Jimmy. You know, it really started for me as a child. I lived across from a great forest, and we were, you know, outside of Atlanta, so it was the suburbs, but we were lucky enough to have a forest that went on for about a mile in one direction and probably a half mile in the other, and or maybe half mile by half mile, something like that. And as a child, I just spent all this time there, and I began to sort of hear the sound current, and I started seeing the elementals that were trying to help the plants to grow. And I think most people can't see them, and so they were surprised that I could. So they told this overlighting angel that was overseeing the whole forest to come and talk with me when I was about eight. And he began to teach me about what's called the vast chain, the chain of worlds, the chain of being, and how the dimensions are stacked, and how we're never alone, even though most of us walk around thinking that we are, that no one comes down without an overlighting protector, whether it's a plant, a forest, an animal, a human, because we're all connected. And so this was my early experiences, and I grew up in one of those great all-American dysfunctional homes. And so my parents were both very intelligent. My dad was a lawyer. He was a county attorney of one of the 5 Atlanta counties, a very big position. They tried to put him up for governor 3 times, but he didn't choose to go down that road because he had been a military officer, and he'd wound up a pilot, and he'd had a stroke at the age of 37, and his whole left side was paralyzed, and so he started drinking and basically kind of went down a path for all of his brilliance of self-destruction, which I think a lot of really good men in that World War II, Korean War generation, they smoked and they drank and, they died hard deaths. And so that was sort of the underpinning. My dad wanted 3 sons. He got 3 daughters, So it was like we all coped in different ways. I have an older sister who's a fundamentalist Christian. I have a younger sister who's she's a Christian, but a little more lenient, so she lets for some metaphysical stuff. When my parents divorced, my mother actually had 2 years of speaking in tongues and laying on of hands in the evangelical movement. I think it was a very deep, mystical Christian. And I always was, I was talking with masters. I started taking long walks at night, as a child, 10, 11, 12, up and down our dead-end street and talking to the stars and ranting and raving to God about suffering and the unfairness of life and why was this allowed to happen and why was that allowed to happen and, where are you and are you listening? Conversations I think a lot of us have had, with the Creator, and this presence started walking by my side, and he was majestic.
How old were you? How old were you at the time?
Oh, about 12.
Okay.
And he would always, I'd rant and rave in my normal human, way. And he would always ask me questions like, why do you think your father's in pain? He would always basically ask questions that counseled compassion, and that no matter how angry you were with the injustice of the, abusive situation that we were all under, very oppressed family, about my dad, what did it come from? That was the question. Why was he in pain? And so by counseling that, it brought me back to forgiveness, and it brought me back to trying to seek the reasons behind human suffering. And so I was always asking the deeper questions from the time I was a child and always seeking. And, when I was growing up, there weren't all these metaphysical books. It was kind of like there was the occult section. Like, do not go into the occult. You're in the deep south. Do not go into the occult. You will be sent to hell.
Right, right.
And I was like sneaking any kind of small, what could this possibly be? I mean, I remember reading Somerset Maugham's The Razor's Edge when I was 13 years old. And if you remember that amazing story, set in the Roaring '20s, Larry, the protagonist, young man, goes to World War I, sees everybody die but himself, starts asking the deeper questions about the nature of suffering, goes to Paris, reads every book he can for 3 years, and puts off his marriage to, the elite Isabel in society for search of truth. And eventually winds up in the Himalayas having a God realization experience with the Vendatist, sages, the masters of the Far East. And then comes back and becomes a cab driver in New York City in order to be, emanate his presence as a master in one of the busiest cities in the world. So I I thought that was brilliant. At 13, I was like, this is the first book I've ever read that's talking about truth.
Right. Well, let's talk about that first, the first law.
Okay. So Thoth, who was known as Hermes, Trismegistus, by the way, or thrice great Hermes in ancient Greece, his very first law is that the universe is conscious, that everything has consciousness, and that the universe being conscious and mental, we can communicate one consciousness to another, whether it's to a cat, to a dog, to each other, to flame or fire or wind or water, that when we tune into the consciousness, which of course is really what the Buddha was doing, we become the singularity. We become the dot at the center of the circle. Even though we may be living in Timbuktu or in the desert or a cave or, in the suburbs of a city or out in the country, we reach a point where we're the center of the dot. And then we realize that we can, perceive 360 degrees from the center of ourself. We can tune into the consciousness. And then, as soon as that happens, for some people, they hear the great sound current, the audible life stream, which is known by a lot of different names. In the Bible, we call it the Word. It was called the or the Hue, or the Shabda, Right. And this, at every dimensional level, the sound changes. So if you get the sound, like down here, it kind of sounds like kind of like the roaring of an ocean. And or a seashell put up to your ears, or let us say a low rumble like a train. That's what it sounds like. But you can go up, and it'll sound like on the causal plane. It sounds like the buzzing of bees. And I remember years ago when I was 19, I went to school at Florida State University when I was 17. At 19, I met and was initiated by these masters called the Viragi masters. And the word Virag comes from the word truth or detachment. So Viragi is masters of detachment. They detach themselves from, the things of the world like money and sex and greed and ambition and all that stuff. And their focus is mapping these inner realms. And they teach something called soul travel, where you can learn while you're still living in a physical body to shift your attention and begin to travel in these realms. And at 19, I was like, yes! What took you so long? This is right! It's like I didn't have to believe somebody. I could do it myself. If I really wanted it bad enough, I could focus, I could meditate, I could learn to attune to those inner realms, and then I could find out for myself. I didn't have to take somebody's word for it. So when you ask me how I describe myself, like an author or historian, I would say first as a mystic. Because everything that I've researched in terms of history, even though I am a big historian and scholar and researcher, and I'm trained in several initiation schools, which we'll pick that back up in just a second. But behind it all is that basically, I think because my home of origin was a home of suffering. And instead of anesthetizing myself with drugs or alcohol like a lot of people do, or, bad girl, rebellious behavior like some people do. I mean, there's a million ways people distract themselves from a dysfunctional, unhappy family of origin. For me, it was the forest, and it was the attunement to spirit. And, Kenneth Reed even talks about this. You remember, he's up in one of those New England states, and he's written several books about this. I was speaking at a conference a few years ago where he was speaking, and he was talking about how something like, I can't remember, but a very high percentage, maybe 60% of the people that are clairvoyant mystical. Basically, they had really miserable childhoods. And so, they, went into the inner world to, because the outer world was too harsh for them.
Right.
So, I've always been active in the outside world. Don't misunderstand me. My personality is, to some degree more extroverted. And, I was always active in clubs and leadership and in college, and I started my own photography business. I was an art director and a photographer, and I was the first female photographer in Atlanta. I had a 5,000 square foot photography studio and shot for Macy's and Ralph Lauren and Calvin Klein, and had several employees. I mean, I did that for many years, but I never set out to be a international speaker or be a clairvoyant for anybody else. I was simply pursuing the call of spirit because I wanted to see what was behind that curtain and that curtain. I wanted to pull back the veils and find out, okay, I can go 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years in the past. How far back does the soul go? Here I am 20,000. Oh, here I'm 50,000. Oh, no, I'm on another planet.
Right.
Where was it before that? So that's what this new book is about, is what is the journey that we make? And, one of the things I found is that all of us come out of the angelic kingdom. And that stunned me because, of course, I had always sort of thought or been taught or assimilated from somewhere that humans and angels were quite different, and so how is it possible? Well, then the question became, well, wait a minute. If we started in the angelic kingdom and we were that tuned in and we were that connected, what the hell happened? How do we get to be in such a mess?
What? That's
killing our brothers and sisters, slaughtering the animals, destroying the planet. I mean, there's something seriously wrong with, a lot of our societies. How did this happen?
Well, that's the big. Well, see, that's the big question. I know it's something that you address, but I talk about it all the time, Tricia. Which is, it seems that we drove off the tracks somewhere, and if you go, and I'm being
adorable.
Well, because if we go back to, let's just go back to something simple to digest, which is, let's go to 2500 BC, right? Let's go to that period where you look at the sculptures and the artwork and the writing and the teachings of ancient Egypt at 2500 BC, and it did nothing but go downhill from that point forward. The artwork got worse, the sculpture, the writings, the teachings, and the degrading went all the way up to Cleopatra. If you go to 0, right? 0 AD, 0 BC, you go to that period, and it's this degradation of culture. And
well, I can tell you some of what happened, okay, but I think it's a complex answer. But you've got a very good point. What happened is the gods begin to subtract themselves, okay? And let me just say, I know there's a lot of controversy out there, but people are like, the gods, what's that? Is that the ETs? Oh, my God, are they good? Are they bad? Are they coming to get us?
Right.
Should we be scared?
Right.
Should we blame them for all our problems?
Right.
I know they're reptilian overlords. Oh, yes, that's what they are. Be very afraid.
Right.
Version of reality. There are so many different versions. And, let me say that the Anunnaki are certainly not reptilian. So let's dispel that bit of mythology. There is a reptilian race among many other races. Syrian, Pleiadian, Arcturian, Antarian. I mean, there's many other races out there. Orion, that's a very big conversation. But the Anunnaki were, in many ways just as human as us. They had all the same wonderful qualities we have and all the same terrible qualities. They had their little petty jealousies, they had their love affairs, they had their, rivalries and so forth. But they were a very lawful society, and they did great good. And like human beings, you have some that were more physically based. Let's get down here. We've got a mission to do. Let's get the goals so we can create an atmosphere around our own planet to block us from the cosmic rays so our crops don't shrivel and we don't die. That's our mission. Everything else is extraneous. And that's how a lot of the camp of Enlil was. And then you have beings like Enki and his family, which included Isis and Osiris and Horus and Thoth. And those were like, wait a minute, we're down here. We hope to jumpstart the DNA of this probably Cro-Magnon man, primitive human, and we've, given him 3/4 of our DNA with whatever he had going on, and he's been working for us, but after a while, he seems actually like he's pretty smart, and we're kind of proud of him, and maybe we have some karmic responsibility to these people. So let's teach them, math and law and governance and writing and history and science and the arts of civilization. And at some point, like children, let's release them to govern themselves. And so that's what's happened. And in some ways, I think we're like an orphan. First, we loved the gods. They were our parents. We adored them. We worshiped them because they taught us everything, just like parents. And then they stepped back from us like training wheels, and we kept trying to get their approval or cursing them, depending on the day of the week. We wanted to blame our problems on them. And then they decided they got into their own squabbles. They misused some of the power, not on purpose, but like humans, they got carried away. Then they stood back from their mess and said, oh my God, for all the good we've done, look at this. We taught them warfare. Maybe, they have their own destiny, and we should step back and let them govern themselves. And so they did that. We missed them for centuries, and then we decided we didn't need them anymore. We wrote them out of history. We denied that they existed. And in fact, anybody who talked about them, like parents, we burned them at the stake. And instead, we said there's one way, one God, and you either do what I say and you go to heaven, or you do what I don't say, or vice versa, and you end up going to hell. And that's what we've had. We've been in the dark ages of human consciousness for about 1,500 years, and, they didn't call it the Dark Ages for nothing.
Right. Well, I think it might be a lot longer than that, too, as well.
Well, this is part of what I talk about in the last book that I did, Return of the Divine Sophia. That came out in March of last year. It's an Intertraditions Bear and Company book. Wonderful company, by the way. And that book, Return of the Divine Sophia, tells the hidden history of the planet going back about 200,000 years in terms of how the divine, the creator, the intelligence of the universe was worshipped basically as the divine mother, because everybody could see that women gave birth, female animals gave birth, so who would have birthed the universe? It was just logical. The divine mother, of course. She gives birth to everybody else. Mother Earth, we're living on her. Nut, the goddess of the heavens. So it was all the divine mother. Then it became the divine mother and father, because after all, they're both genders and there's balance in the world. And then it became the divine father, mother, daughter, and son. And actually, at the time of King Solomon, that's what was going on. And then the patriarchy, the priest of Yahweh, basically destroyed the mother, destroyed the son, who, by the way, was the god of love, and destroyed the daughter. And then they became relentlessly patriarchal. And actually, what occurred was, there were 12 tribes, 10 kingdoms lived in Judah, or Judea, up in the northern part, and in Samaria. I'm sorry, not Judea, in Samaria, not Sumeria, Samaria, like a good Samaritan.
Right.
And 2 tribes lived down in Israel and Judah. And so the Samaria wound up falling to the Assyrians about 722 BC. And then, and the two tribes below did not even lift a finger to help them. That's how, mad they were at each other. And then around 576 or something, the Babylonians came in and took the second kingdom. And that was during the reign of King Solomon's son. And so they went for 50 years to Babylon in captivity, and they weren't held in prisons. After a while, they were allowed to live, and they had their normal lives, and they could worship as they wanted to, but they couldn't set up any temples. And so the priest had a lot of time on their hands. So they sat around and made up all these midrashes, and I'm sure there's some good midrashes out there, but there's some really stupid ones, like, you can't walk 1,000 paces on the Sabbath. You can't heal anybody on the Sabbath. That was one of the problems they had with Jesus. You can't, if you walk up a ladder and you step on the hem of your robe, you must stop until someone comes to rescue you.
Right.
They had a lot of time on their hands, poor things.
Yeah.
They still wanted to be important. So then the Persians came in and conquered Babylon and released the Jews around, maybe like 520, I think, something like that. And they wound up going back to their lands. In fact, only a third of them went. The other 2/3 stayed in Babylon. They didn't even want to go back. Well, this was the opportunity the priests of Yahweh needed to really seize control. So the Persians underwrote the building of the roads and the building of the cities and the building of the second temple. The first temple was, Solomon and David. So this was the second temple. And they did it because they needed a tax base for their conquered lands. So basically about maybe 3% of the population could read at that point. So this was when the coup happened. And so our Old Testament that we have, I think, there's a whole lot of books that were written 100, 200, 300 BC. Even the first 5 books of the Bible, which are called the books of Moses, by the way. So, like most of us, I assume Moses wrote those books. But in fact, no. Moses, that whole thing happened probably around 1250, 1280. We're having to guess, but that's when we think it happened. And so King Solomon was 950 BC. So that's about 300, 1200, 1110, 300 years. So the first time in the 5 books of the Bible that 60% of those books could have even been constructed would have been between about 700 and 950. That's the first possibility. That's 300 to 500 years after the events. That's like somebody asking me to tell a story of George Washington. I could just sort of make up anything.
Right. Which is
well, George, he cut down that cherry tree, I heard. Now this is the real story. I could have said anything.
Well, let me jump in right there. It's a good spot to take a break. And
okay.
And we'll pick this up right after we come back. Our guest tonight, Tricia McCannon. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. More Tricia right after this break. Stay with us.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Always on the edge of the hottest alternative talk. Jimmy Church with Fade to Black. KGRARadio.com.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Not being able to fall asleep is so frustrating.
The tossing, the turning, the adjustment of pillows and blankets. Eventually you just decide to get up and start your day really early. It doesn't have to be this way though. Power Sleep is an all-natural non-prescription formula that will help you sleep like a baby. It contains neurotransmitter nutrients that promote the production of serotonin, which is responsible for feelings of well-being. Power Sleep is easy to digest and absorb and is made in a base of active probiotics. Don't miss another night of sleep. Order your Power Sleep at energywave.com or call 800-TURTLE-5. Add Power Vites to your cart while you're browsing. Perfect for Monday mornings. They're a complete multivitamin and mineral formula that will give you the energy you need to get through your day. Nourish your immune system and feel great. Get all the info and place your order at energywave.com. Enter code word SLEEP to get free shipping. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Did you ever turn to your radio for your favorite talk show to find that it's been preempted for this?
In the air to deep right center. Back goes Lewis to the wall, and it's all here!
Or this?
And I'm ashamed of you, Hillary, for voting for it.
Do you have a favorite talk radio program that's not available in your city? Just go to TalkStreamLive.com for links to the best streaming talk radio shows. At TalkStream Live, you will find live talk shows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All your favorites are here. With such a large selection, you will also discover some new favorites. On the go and still want to listen? With the mobile smartphone, simply type TalkStream Live on your internet browser. Now you can take internet radio with you. You will also find hundreds of music, news, and sports streams. Best of all, the TalkStream Live directory is free and there's never a login required. Remember TalkStreamLive.com, the fastest route between you and your favorite talk radio show.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Back to Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight is Tricia McCannon. She is a renowned American clairvoyant, historian, author, and teacher who has traveled the world in search of answers to the greatest mysteries of the ages. Want to remind everybody, tomorrow night, Brian Forrester is here live from Cusco, Peru. And on Wednesday, Dannion Brinkley right here. You know what's great, Tricia? Next month, you're going to be at the New Living Expo. Dannion Brinkley is going to be there, too, as well. That's going to be a pretty exciting weekend.
Yeah, it'll just absolutely be great. Danny and I have been friends for many years, and in fact, if you don't mind emailing me his number, he's given it to me a million times, but I actually might talk to him about this book because I've this whole new book that I'm writing. It'd be great to actually have him maybe do the foreword for it because of his near-death experiences.
Yeah. And he's great. He's great, and I will do that for you. That's not a problem. And you know what's crazy about Dannion is you watch him walk around. He's like bees to honey. People are attracted to him. He walks around with a crowd.
He's lovely.
Yeah,
he's got a really good heart, and he's had an incredibly interesting life.
Yes,
and it changes you. When I died in 2002, I was in the hospital for a few weeks and had surgery and died on the operating table. And when you die and go over to the other side and you meet those beings of light, it's an opportunity to do a check-in, like how are you doing? How's the mission going? Do I want to stay or go, or is there more to do?
Well, last month I've never had an NDE, right? But I nearly did. last month we were at a conference and we're at breakfast, and I choked. Some food some food went down the wrong pipe, and sitting at the table with us, are you ready? Linda Moulton Howe is to my right. To my left is Micah Hanks. My wife Rita is there. I'm trying to think who was sitting facing me. Mike Barra was there at the table, and we're all sitting having breakfast. Gigi and his sister. And so anyway, that was the table, and then it just went down the wrong pipe. And
oh my gosh, that's very serious. Did someone do the Heimlich maneuver on you?
Micah Hanks was going to, but I'll say this: in the span of about 2 seconds, maybe 1 second, 2 seconds, I literally had 1,000 thoughts blow through my brain all at the same time. Pretty incredible experience. And then I just blew it out all over the table, all over everybody's food. And that was it. It was like, check, please. Everybody was,
oh, my goodness gracious. Well, that's in a lot of ways how people describe the life review, is that the things are going by so quickly, the mind can't even hold them. That's very interesting. You may have just kind of touched into that.
It was 1,000 thoughts at one time. And it slowed down. Gigi just tweeted right here. He goes, I saw the whole thing. And I felt really bad. That was the other thing. I felt really bad that I ruined everybody's breakfast. But it happened. And I had like 1,000 electric right through my mind at the same time. It was a bizarre thing to go through. Now, before we move on, I want to talk about the 30 missing years of Jesus.
Okay. Is it okay, though, because we've been on for a little while, if I tell people about being the next three things? We're going to be doing the New Living, you and me, and a lot of our wonderful colleagues on the circuit in San Francisco. That's the last weekend in April in San Mateo. And I'll be there, and you can go to the New Living Expo site, and you'll get to see all this cool stuff about us, and then and about the whole show. And then the first weekend in June is the Contact in the Desert. We're both going to be at that.
Yep.
With a lot of our beloved friends like Robert Perala and Laura Eisenhower and Jim Mars, and just, a wonderful, wonderful group of people. I think Greg Braden's going to be at the New Living Expo. And then in the first weekend of September, I am in the Omega Institute doing a whole weekend on the Egyptian mysteries. So that should be great. Anybody who's up in the Northeast that gets this broadcast or, wants to fly in, it's a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at the Omega Institute, and it's a 9/11 weekend, so you can't forget that. But you can always go to their website or go to my website if you want to. I've just kind of got it up on mine, which is www.TriciaMcCannon.com or TriciaMcCannonSpeaks.com. Both of those addresses will get you to the exact same place.
Do you think Greg Braden's hair is real? I just want to know. What do you think, Tricia?
Well, I have no reason to believe it's not. And listen, some drastic changes come over Greg in the last 2 years. I've seen him.
His hair is just... I'm just messing around.
If I remember right, he has a lot of wonderful hair.
He does. That's what I'm saying. It's too perfect. He's got it trained.
I was thinking you were serious there. Oh my God.
No. I'm just playing around. Him and Don Schmidt, that hair it's okay, moving on. All right. We love
probably
Greg.
Have, they might be Leo rising, or they might have the sun on the ascendant, which Leos and Leo rising people tend to have a big old head of hair.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm an astrologer as well as a clairvoyant and also hypnotherapist and a healer in many different modalities, but I love astrology. It's a great archetypal language, and maybe that's something we can wind up doing a show on at some point.
Would love to. And before we get to the missing 30 years of Jesus, and I want to talk about Mary Magdalene as well, You mentioned earlier, and I let this slip by. So before we move forward, you mentioned deja vu. Now, that is something that I not only talk about, I'm just fascinated with, because I deja vu every day, right? And
oh my God, you do?
I enjoy it. I just write it out, and I'm just like, this is cool. Okay, let's do this. I have no issues with it, but I don't know what is really going on. And
would you like me to tell you?
Yeah, well, I would like to, but yes, I do. But you also mentioned it was connected to past lives. Did you make that connection? You went past it so fast, I didn't get a chance to stop you.
Yeah, I know. You can tell. You and I could hang out and talk for about 8 hours without blinking,
Right,
and
right. We could.
Okay, so deja vu. Before a soul, all of us, decide to take the courageous plunge and come down to earth, between each lifetime, we meet with our guides to kind of figure out our plan for what we need to work on: compassion, humility, courage, creativity, service, forgiveness. There's so many lessons. And then basically the great masters work to try to find some lifetimes that would provide the soul with that set of lessons. And the soul goes to a place called the Ring of Destiny. And it's a big sphere, and they enter it, and they can stop and start. The masters start it, and usually they'll pick about 3 possible lives, and the soul previews the lives, and then they make a decision based on what they've seen as to which life they want. And they can stop and start the movement of the images in time and enter into a scene with their consciousness, so they can start to examine what the challenges will be, what the obstacles will be, but what the outcome and what the gain, the spiritual gain, even though, you might be born, as they say, a poor black person, or a poor Chinese person, or a poor white person, for that matter. There's a lot of those around too, or a handicapped person, or a person that seems that they get a rough beginning. But there's always a reason that you chose that setup. And many times it's in the seeds of our wounding patterns that we find that we ask the questions, that if we can pursue the answers, those answers will give us a chance to do our life's work. And I think of this as the karmic dharmic arc. The karma is like the challenge. If we rise to meet it instead of letting it defeat us, then we find we're motivated. Like the boy who loses his mother in high school to years of cancer, he becomes a doctor, or he becomes a healer, or sets out to find a cure for cancer. The young boy whose father dies in the military, he grows up to become a man that oversees young boys, like Boys Club of America, or works with disadvantaged boys. So there's always a reason for what happened in the childhood, which the soul, determines. The soul doesn't see the whole life, of course, and a lot of times they don't see the outcomes, because once we get it's like a test. They can't give us the answers. We come up with the answers ourselves. And so they give us a certain amount. So when you have a deja vu, it tells you first that you're on your path. You're in your destiny. You're doing what you need to do, because this is what you saw. This is why you chose that life.
And Walter wants to know, when by gods, do you mean advanced aliens?
Yeah, at a certain level, this is what we've all learned to call them. And, I think we're trying to come up with a vocabulary, to be honest with you. I think we're having to try to invent something, because alien, of course, is like, and it's not one of ours, no siree. Right. You're an alien. So, and of course, we've been taught by Hollywood to fear aliens. But, really, most of us are really old, believe me. And most of us, even though we might be young, or intermediate or early stage advanced souls, we still have
almost all incarnated in other places, on other planets. Most of us have just, been here for thousands of years, or in some cases tens of thousands of years, a lot, and so we're used to this place. But when I saw my clients coming in on those spaceships, some of them from the Pleiades, they look totally human. Some of them were from cultures where the people look human, but they're taller than we are, or they're slightly different colors, or they carry themselves in slightly different regal ways. But yes, they're, when you start talking about the different dimensional levels, this is a big conversation. Let's face it, it's a puzzle that a lot of us have been working on for a long time. When you talk about extraterrestrials, you're talking about beings, in some cases, that are completely third-dimensional beings. And they get in spaceships and they come here, or they go through time portals or Stargate doorways that open periodically in space, and then we have a lot of extraterrestrial commerce or travel between the planetary systems, and then there comes a time when those stargates close, like the universe breathes in and the universe breathes out. And when they close, whoever's on either side of the gate is stuck. And this is why there's been a lot of different races that have contributed to the genetic DNA of humans here. It's not just the Anunnaki. There, in fact, some of the hidden teachings in my mystery school that come from the Native American twisted hair tradition claim that there are 12 extraterrestrial races that seeded this planet.
Well, that's I think it could be 1,000 races. If you think about look at it in these terms, Tricia. I know this is how my brain works, but if you and I and our dog and my wife and let's say somebody from Africa, somebody from Japan, all were on a spaceship and took off and landed on somebody else's planet, we all step off, what are they looking at? They're looking at me, some fat white dude, right? They would look at my wife, a gorgeous woman. They would look at you, a blonde. My wife has got red hair, for instance. And then somebody from Japan and somebody from Africa and a dog and maybe a cat. They're seeing all kind. They wouldn't realize that they were looking at one race. They would think that it was 8 different types of aliens. And
that's exactly right. They'd probably scream and say, "Egads, aliens!"
Right. And that's just from Earth. Now, there's a lot of stars out there. There's a lot of planets out there. There's a lot of races. There's a lot of different things that have been visiting this planet for a very long time. And not, we think of Pleiadians as one race. There could be 8 different types of Pleiadians.
Many. The Pleiades is a group of about 2,500 stars.
That's right, and
there are multiple worlds around some of those stars.
That's exactly my point. So when people, it's funny because if somebody says 12 races to me, I think they're way off on the number. It could be in the thousands, but somebody outside of our circles that doesn't understand this and they hear 12, they're like, what are you talking about? There's only, gray aliens. What do you mean 12? So they don't get it as well. We've been visited by a lot of different races for a very, very long time.
We really have. And, one of the people who was doing some wonderful research on this, research that can't be gotten really any other way, was my dear friend Dolores Cannon, who passed about 1.5 years ago in October.
Right.
And Dolores wrote about 14 books, and she looked like, Betty Crocker or something.
Yes.
But she was just, a pistol, and she was a wonderful hypnotherapist, and she did hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of regressions. Well, of course, some of them were past lives and so forth, but some of them, to her complete and utter amazement, went into lifetimes people had had on other planets, or lifetimes where they had come to this planet. They crash landed on this planet. Well, of course, these people
had no memory of this. They had no thought of this. They knew nothing about aliens. It was, a stunner for them as well. And sometimes she put them under multiple times, and the same being that they had been, obviously, in a past life, would come in and speak, and there was complete consistency in the information. And like one of these people had a lifetime where he had come down to Earth and was carrying all this hidden secret information about the stars and the star people and so forth, and was looking. He spent like 30 years of his life looking for a person that had a high enough consciousness that he could pass the knowledge on. And everywhere he went, he was looking at humanity and trying to figure out what strange, brutal creatures we were, trying to figure out why in the world we tortured each other and burned each other and, killed each other. And, it didn't make any sense to him. He was clearly a much higher consciousness individual who was far more attuned with the harmony of the universe.
Does astrology have anything to do with past lives?
Well, astrology has some indicators in the chart as to past life patterns if you know how to read them.
Right.
The South Node, for example, always indicates something you've done before in a past life that you've brought in with you that you're good at. It's kind of like an old, comfortable pair of shoes. And you can use it as a strength, but ultimately during the arc of your life's journey, you're meant to grow towards your North Node, which is, we could call it your destiny. So that's one element you can see in a chart. For example, today I did a reading for a lovely woman from Los Angeles, and she had Chiron, which is the planet of the wounded healer, that when they heal their own issues, they can become the master healer, in the 12th house. And the 12th house is past lives. It's also the subconscious, it's dreams, visions, archetypes, the mind of God, it's all that. But it's past lives. And it was in Capricorn. And so it told me immediately that she had wounding patterns from past lives from the patriarchy. And because of other things in the chart where I could see that she had been a priestess of the mysteries, she had the sun and the moon and Mercury, which is to say her conscious mind, her subconscious mind, and her mental body in Virgo, which on the mundane levels just work, but on the higher level, it's the priestess, healer, and it was an 8th house of the mysteries. The 8th house is Pluto's house. It's life and death and initiation and the mysteries and the secrets of the inner planes and the underworld and all of that. And so I could see that she had been before, but I saw it was a configuration in the chart. But yeah, I think astrology is a very powerful holographic tool.
Is there a distinct difference between the soul and the spirit and consciousness, or are they all the same?
Well, I think we use these terms kind of interchangeably, but what I mean when I say it, spirit with a capital S would be, the Great Spirit. It would be God with a big G. It would be the divine intelligence, the one consciousness that creates and suffuses everything. Spirit with a little s really would be
a ghost?
The breath that animates us,
right.
Let us say. Right. And the soul would be that unique unit of consciousness that you are. And that there's an anatomy to the soul. There's a configuration about the soul. And I talk about this in this book that I'm writing that's due to be turned in the next month. So that this energy anatomy has to do with harmonizing, discovering these past lives that we have and harmonizing them together. And of course, all the lives
contain great gifts for us, gifts of learning, gifts of wisdom, but they might also contain some hard lessons, and they can also be lives where there's not a sense of a completion. We die suddenly, there's an accident, there's a violence, there's a tree falls on you, and so when there are lives that they have unfinished business, or you're burned at the stake. There's a trauma associated with them, and it can be beliefs that we acquired as a result of that, or vows that we took, or there's a whole number of things that decisions we can make in lifetimes, and then we die with that decision in place, and that decision follows us as a subconscious subpersonality into this lifetime, asking for resolution, asking for us to discover it and twist the tangled threads so that the energy can flow in harmony again. And that's a lot of the work I do as a healer. As a clairvoyant, I go in and see who the person is and what their journey's been, and what are their themes, what have they mastered, what are they still working to master, where are they stuck, who are their soulmates, and many times I'm able to see their purpose in this lifetime. And so then if there are blocks in the way, I wind up doing other sessions with them that have to do with clearing them. And most of these blocks, as you might imagine, are not in the busy beta brain of the conscious mind. We can observe the self-sabotage patterns that we have in our world, but we might not know where they're coming from. And most of those patterns are either in alpha or theta states of consciousness. So in order to clear them, you have to go into alpha and theta states of consciousness. And that's where hypnotherapy and holographic repatterning and rebirthing and those kinds of modalities time-on therapy that I work with kind of fit in, because you go in, you find where the recording is in the alpha or theta state of consciousness, and you change it. You change the pattern, and in so doing, you heal that subpersonality that then, instead of being adversarial or blocking, actually becomes an ally for you.
That's interesting. And talking about the recording, especially in the theta state, is that deja vu, if you think about it? I mean, deja vu is you're seeing almost the future, right? It is something that has already happened, but you're seeing it before it actually happens in front of you. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, I think what's happening, this is how I experience it, is it's like I suddenly feel like I'm seeing something I've seen before or I've been there before. And in fact, it's probably a moment that I saw in the Ring of Destiny before I came in.
And what if you haven't been there before, but you know what's about to happen? Now, that's something bizarre, too, as well. Are you seeing that somebody has seen your future and has plugged it into your brain and is allowing you to see something that's about to happen, and you know that it's about to happen? And that I don't understand that. And it's like somebody has recorded it for you.
Right. And I think the universe is so remarkable. And every single thing we've talked about tonight, whether we talk about Buddha or Jesus or the Divine Mother or the gods or the theta state or the nature of the soul, all this is the mysteries.
Yes, it is.
And more.
It is. And let's hit this break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about Jesus yet. And we're going to get Mary Magdalene in here. I promise. And you want to take some phone calls?
Yeah, sure, no problem. And again, my website for anyone who's interested is my name, Tricia McCannon. So it's TRICIA.
We got it. It's a hard break right here. Here it comes.
Okay.
Here it comes. We'll be right back.
Okay.
KGRA Radio. Intelligent talk.
If your home has hard water and it's leaving white spots, then it's likely that limescale is clogging your pipes. Limescale can cost hundreds of dollars a year in wasted energy and early appliance breakdown. HydroCare systems available at Wave Home Solutions prevent and remove limescale with just a simple filter change every 3 years. There are no salts, chemicals, or magnetic coils. Satisfaction guaranteed. For more information, just go to bestwater123.com. That's bestwater123.com.
If you're a talk radio fan, AccessRadio.net lets you listen to the best talk shows anytime and from anywhere. Works on your mobile or landline phone, and there's no cost if you have unlimited minutes. No need to use your data. Find your favorite talk show listen lines and discover new ones. Now you can listen on your schedule. Go to AccessRadio.net. That's AccessRadio.net. Save your favorite listen lines today.
Hi, I'm Richard Dolan. When I'm not hosting my radio program, The Richard Dolan Show on KGRA, or writing new books on UFOs, I run a publishing company. I'm proud to say that Richard Dolan Press has published some of the most fascinating books available on UFOs and related subjects. They include Dr. Bruce Maccabee's classic analysis of the UFO cover-up, David Marler's breakthrough book on triangular UFOs, Dr. Richard Sauter's unique work on underground bases, and other classics by Grant Cameron, Chase Kletsky, and Dr. Bob Wood, not to mention intriguing works by Eve Lorgan and Laurie MacDonald that deal with truly bizarre phenomena. I'm proud to publish such high quality and original works, and there are several amazing books about to be released over the next few months. Go to richarddolanpress.com to learn more.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of Fade to Black by just calling 605-562-4482. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Just call 605-562-4482. You can listen to me, Jimmy Church, on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Go Beckley Tappy.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why fade to black? Because you never got that pony, damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
Welcome back to Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Tricia McCannon. Fascinating conversation tonight. Opening up the phone lines, 323-825-5045. 323-825-5045. Tomorrow night, Brian Forrester is going to be here. And then on Wednesday, Daniel Brinkley. All right, while we're waiting to line up some phone calls, Tricia, what happened to the baby Jesus for 30 years? The little baby Jesus.
You're so funny. Yeah, you know, he didn't call himself Jesus. In fact, he called himself Issa, which means firstborn. And that's how he was known to the Celtic Isles and in India, the great Lord Issa, in Persia. In fact, in Egypt, the first Coptic church is called the Church of Issa, Lord Issa. So I love that. And Issa comes from a long word. I think it's Issara, Hedu, Anima, Hedu. Anyway, I can't remember. I used to know it. And it's in my Jesus book. It's one of the things I talk about in that. And it's a longer name for Lord Brahma, for the Creator. So it's just really beautiful. Okay, so what happened? Well, you know, I've written 3 books, and then I have 13 online books and about 30 DVDs that are all about the mysteries and the lost years of Jesus and Hermetics and Thoth and Atlantis and all these things we've been talking about, the cycles of time. And so the Jesus book took me about 3 years to write. It has 1,200 footnotes and about 120 illustrations.
that book is an amazing book, and I know with your love of history and grounded knowledge, you would totally dig it. It's in 5 sections. So the first section is just 2 chapters. What are the mysteries, and what's the evidence that Jesus was involved in it? Well, the word mysteria is used something like 21 or 23 times in the New Testament. And in fact, it said the Lord taught everything in a mystery. And the second chapter is really about the 3 levels of initiation and how they encoded their wisdom in these hermetic symbols, these secret symbols. And if you were an initiate, you knew what it was. And if you weren't, it was just an owl or just a cross or just an ankh or just a chalice. So, and if you're an initiate, you knew what it really meant. And then we really began with, Jesus' life and when was he really born. I have a whole conversation about that, and I present 3 charts where there were appropriate conjunctions, and believe it or not, 2 of them were actually on December 25th. And then actually 4 possibilities. One was July 27th, which is the Magi had predicted a great conjunction at that time, and it was the heliacal rising of the star Sirius, which signaled the rising of the Nile and the flooding for the next year of crops. It was connected with Osiris and Jesus. And then the last date, which may actually have been the date, would have made him a Libra around the 10th of October.
What? Wait. That's my birth date.
Oh, wow. What a wonderful birthday.
Wow. I when you said Libra, I knew you were going to go there. Let's take our first call. Bill, say hi to Tricia. How are you tonight?
Hey, good. How you guys doing? Hi, Tricia. Jim, how you guys doing?
Hey, Bill, where are you calling from?
Northeast Missouri.
Missouri. I love that country. That's a beautiful area. Georgia and Missouri are kind of shaped like the same with the shape of the pattern of the states.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I didn't even... Yeah, that's right. Bill.
Yeah, and you've got those wonderful Indian mounds up near St. Louis.
And lots of mud in Missouri. Bill...
The Cahokia Mounds is the big one that's close.
So
Missouri is a cool state. It's a pretty state, too.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. Bill, did you have a question for Tricia?
Yeah. Let's kind of back up a little bit in our show there. When you was there as a and seeing these others as beings of light, did you see yourself as a being of light?
You mean when I was a child?
Well, yeah. Whenever it was that you seen, these others that you've seen as beings of light, did you notice that yourself, that you was a being of light also? I mean, you're in spirit form, so I'll take the answer off air, and thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Bill, okay, I'm trying to guess what he means. As a child, when I was encountering that first angel and the elementals, I think I've always felt like I was a really old soul. So I feel like I've always known that I was like an eternal being, back on Earth for one more exciting round. With a lot of the amnesia of the memories wiped, as most of us have going, here we are once again. It would be nice to be able to remember everything, but it seems like it goes with the territory that a lot of our memory is, lost or taken when we come in. And I think I was somebody that probably before I came in, if I jumped out of the plane and, parachuted into Earth, I was saying, I will remember. So, a lot of my work has to do with helping the souls remember who they are when I do these readings for people. If you're asking whether or not I saw like the being that was walking with me, I was aware that I'm a physical solid being and he's a light being, and of course the light is inside of me too, but like that movie Cocoon, we might be these light beings, but we're dressed up in mortal, physical, dense earth suits down here. Even though when we die, we lose the suit and we just become that light being again.
So
yeah, and I think I was going to ask you the same question earlier when you were walking through the woods when you were 12, and you had this spirit walking next to you, and you were communicating with. I think that's what he was referring to. But how did that communication happen? Were you physically talking, or was this?
Yeah, physically talking.
And the spirit, you could hear the spirit?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I would go walking at night. We had a very long street, and we were at the first house, and so you could go up over the hill and go down the hill and around to the turnaround, and it was like, a fourth of a mile at least. And then there were woods. You could really go walking in the woods if you really wanted to at night, which I love the nighttime in the woods and the stars, so I was never frightened. So I would usually, a lot of times when I walked at night, it was because I was angry and trying to let off steam. And, when you grow up in a family with 5 people and like 3 bedrooms, as you know, there's not a lot of there's no privacy. I always had to share a room with one of my 2 sisters, and so where could you go to be alone? So I took walks. So, I'd be ranting and raving about the injustice of things and so forth, and I would become aware that this being was walking at my right side. It was almost always my right side. And he was golden. He was translucent. He didn't show me his head and I would even get to the point after, talking with him for a while, I would say, why don't you just show yourself? It's like, I know you're there. Just materialize.
Right.
And you know how we are. We're so impatient, we humans, and we want evidence. We like the miracles, and I definitely am a girl that likes the miracles, and I've had plenty of them in my life, but I still continue to expect them, and I continue to get them. So that's a good thing. So this being really was my guide, and then I sort of forgot about him. Not really, but, once you start dating, 15, 16, 17, then you have to go off to college and all that stuff. I was still looking, but I think I kind of went through a couple of years there where I was like secretly mad with God for the injustice of the whole thing. And so then I went off to college, and I wound up at 19 meeting the Viragi. And the Viragi masters were very powerful masters for me. There were about 5 of them in the physical body. Some of them were just on the other side. There was one, for example, called Pedar Zask that had passed over about 6 months before I ever met the Viragi masters, and people would talk about him. And I saw a picture of him. I'm like, he looks like a Baptist minister to me. He's like, wow. And his grammar isn't so good and all this stuff. Well, I then finally met him on the inner planes. And for 5 years, he taught me on the inner. And he was such a magnetic, charismatic, dynamic person. I finally understood why everybody had been so taken with him. And he used to put books in my hands in the inner planes and say, you're going to write this book one day, and you'll write this book one day. And, I would wake up reading the books at night in the dream state. And, of course, when you read in the inner planes, it's totally different from how we read. I don't know, the words are inverted, or it's more holistic or something. It's like a hologram that you're taking in, and then your linear mind tries to translate it as you're starting to wake up. It's a totally different way of perceiving in the 4th dimension or the 5th dimension. And these masters would take me to these places called the Temples of Golden Wisdom, and I always wanted to read the books there. I was like, more books. And there was a book called the Shariat Ki Sugmad, and there were different volumes you could find at different dimensional levels. And the Shariat Ki Sugmad means the way of the eternal. So it was like the eternal path of truth. And so anyway, these masters were great, and I worked with them for many years, and
Then when I was about 27, and I talk about this in the Sophia book. This is how the Sophia book starts. I dreamt, I had one of those very, very vivid lucid dreams that I had gone back to school for my master's degree, and I woke up in the dorm room, and there was all this extraterrestrial writing all over the walls, and I tried to remember it, but I fell back asleep, and when I woke up, the writing was gone, and the only thing I could remember was a circle with a dot at the center. So I went to the school library to see if I could find some reference to this symbol, and while I was there, the student assistant came and got me and said, there's a phone call for you at the front desk, and I'm like, a phone call? Nobody even knows I'm here. How can there be a phone call? So I went to the front desk and picked up the phone, and I said, hello, and they said, is this Tricia McCannon? And I said, yes. And they said, we've called to tell you that your dreams are real.
Shut up.
And I was like, what? Who is this? And they said, we're from the priestesses of Isis, and that's all we're permitted to tell you at this time. And then they hung up, and it was a woman's voice. So then I woke up, and it was a dream within a dream. And there was a symbol, and then there were the priestesses of Isis. And I was like, who the hell are the priestesses of Isis? Is this like some sort of strange Egyptian cult or something? I had no idea.
Right.
I mean, obviously completely intrigued, but how am I going to find out anything about them? So 2 months later...
Well, wait. Stop. The circle with the dot.
Yes. Well, there's a lot of things that means. I was later to discover that the ancients used that as a symbol for the Creator and also for the sun. Mm-hmm. They considered that the visible sun in our sky was one of three emanations of the Creator that we could perceive. One is the visible light that allows the planet to have life on it. One is let us say, the great central sun, or the real light, the spiritual light behind all the physical lights. And then one of them is what they call the solar sun, S-O-U-L, like a soul, A-R, solar sun. And that's the Christ. It's the periodic incarnations of the sons of God that come to the earth to bring enlightenment to humankind. And
did you ever try to do any regression to recall the other symbols or writing that you saw?
That's very interesting, because about 6 months ago, one night, I started getting downloaded with all these symbols, and I wrote page after page of them, like extraterrestrial symbols. And it just happened that one night. So, no, but I think that would be a great idea, actually, a brilliant idea, actually. So, yes, so one of the things about this symbol, the dot with the circle around it, is now what physicists are using, coincidentally, to represent the singularity. In other words, the one in the middle, and then the circle is what they call the event horizon, which is to say everything else.
Right.
Everything the one creates.
Right.
Okay. And so, or God and the universe. Okay. So 2 months after this profoundly lucid, initiatory, something's happening dream, this is when I had my photography studio, and I had taken myself to lunch, and there was a wait at this Roussan's sushi restaurant. So it was a two-story kind of shopping plaza, and I went down to the main level, and there was this beautiful store called Illumina, great name, with plush carpets and crystals and Egyptian statues. And I went in, and I was like, looking at this beautiful Egyptian statue, which at that time I did not know, because I wasn't trained, that this was Ma'at, the goddess of cosmic truth. And I was looking at her, and the woman behind the counter said, "Are you interested in Egyptian things?" And I said, "Yeah, I've been dreaming of the priestesses of Isis." And she said, "Oh, tell me about your dreams." And I said, "Well, if you're not going to understand my dreams, I'm not even sure I understand my dreams." She said, "Try me. I'm a Hierophant in the priestesses of Isis." And a Hierophant is a high initiate. And so this was to become my shaman teacher. And her name was Shasta Zering. And she was a very mysterious woman. She lived in the woods in a sacred vortex in the crossing of 4 ley lines where there were underwater dry, underwater springs or underwater rivers, and she was a real holy woman. She's still alive, and we're still, of course, friends and in touch and so forth. But she invited me to her place, and it was this cottage, like Hansel and Gretel cottage in the woods, and it had shells and crystals and bones lining the walkway, and it had a porch with a big cow skull and a deer hide and spider dream catchers, and kind of like knocking on the door. My little Christian, like, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into?
Right.
So she invited me in, and the house was set up like four corners, like a cross, with 4 rooms. And so the first room on the left front had nothing but 4 altars in it. It was the living room. That house must have been, 200 years old. It has had a fireplace, a little brick fireplace, and 4 altars. And one of the altars was a cat-headed Egyptian goddess, and it was stained glass, about 4 feet tall, and lit up from behind. And I remember her taking me through that room, and I'm sure my eyes were like as big as saucers, I was like, oh my God, I'm like stepped into a fairy tale or something. She took me into her kitchen. She had, like, I think, 10 white cats, and we moved the cats and sat down and began to talk. And I spent the day with her, and we wound up going into the vortex of the ceremonial area, which is, I don't know, at least probably 3 to 5 acres. And there were statues to the Divine Mother in all of her forms, and grottos and prayer ties and holy trees, and there was a medicine circle in the center, and I could feel, I'm a clairvoyant. I could feel the beings that were present there, and immediately they began, being present with me and speaking with me. And some of the things she said that day, they shifted my entire reality. Like, for example, in Christianity and Judaism and Muslim world, so patriarchal, we're told that, man was created first, woman was taken from the rib. She's just an appendage anyway, so she might as well serve him while she's at it. Okay? Wow. But actually, biologically, all mammals are created female. All of us. And the existence of the male comes because of the release of an additional androgen. It's like the goddess comes first, and then she says, and I really would love a companion. I think I'll take these wonderful men. And thank goodness she did. But it's a complete reversal in terms of the biology of what's true.
I do a Fader fact every day on the show, and a couple of days ago, or last week, I was going through some facts and vetting them, and that was one of them. It's kind of synchronicity that you're bringing that up right now, but I almost did that last week on the show. I just brought in Eric. Eric's got a question about the Anunnaki. Eric, say hi to Tricia.
Hi, Tricia.
Hey, Eric. You have a nice voice. Where are you from?
Thank you. I'm in California, Central Coast.
California is wonderful. So are you north of L.A. and south of San Francisco?
North, I'm near Santa Barbara, close by, about an hour further north, near Pismo Beach, California.
Oh, my gosh. Well, I've been to Santa Barbara one time, and Mamma Mia, is that beautiful? Earth, sea, and sky.
You're not lying. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
beautiful part of the country. Go ahead, Eric.
I want to share something with you, but I'm feeling a little emotional tonight. So if I sound a little nervous, it's because I want to share something with you that's kind of heavy for me.
I'd love to hear.
Okay, so I've been, I don't know how this happened, but I came across somebody today who lives in Florida and I don't know for a fact, but I believe she says that she is of the Anunnaki race. And this is not a joke what I'm sharing with you right now. And I'm actually having a direct message tweet with her as we're speaking, so I'm just calling to share with you some of the things that she has told me here in the last 20 minutes. and I would like your feedback. So it might take about a minute for me to get it out. Is that okay?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'd love to hear.
Okay, so I'm going to read to you exactly what she said to me. I asked her several questions, and she said, I am not sure how many races, but I do know the Anunnakis from Nibiru are composed by many different races. That she also says that since the Anunnaki gods are the ones that created all this here on Earth. Then she goes on to say the shadow government is composed by reptilians. They are working underground for shadow government. She also goes on to say, I know this because I'm in direct communication with Anunnaki from Nibiru for many years. They tell me everything. They know everything that is happening with everyone here on planet Earth. She says Anunnakis transmit love, and I think some people can feel that right away. She also says, I do not know anything about you. I don't know your bloodline. I am not a psychic. I am just Anunnaki ET. My Anunnaki gods are the ones that help me and protect me from the predators in the past years. She says, I do not believe that ET origins are only based on blood type. ET Anunnakis have a brain that is a computer. We don't function the same way humans do. I am very advanced inside my purpose, my mission. I have been helping humanity since I found out about my true ET life here on Earth. I have helped in some very important investigations that will save many people. And that's where my last tweet was with her at 9:19, 8 minutes ago. Do you have any feedback, or do you want to share anything about that?
Yeah. First off, let me just say that I like the Anunnaki, but they weren't perfect, but neither are we. And there definitely were some contingents that got a little, heady with power. But as I said, Inky's group was very much concerned with the upliftment of the human spirit. And in fact, Thoth said, ye are gods walking about in the bodies of mortals, while we are, walking about in the longer-lived bodies of the gods. So they recognize that the same soul that lives in them, or same spirit that lives in them, lives in us. But, they had a larger brain capacity. They had about 3,300 grams to their brain, where, dolphins have about, it takes 1,000 grams to master language. Gorillas have about 800. We have about 1,350 grams, okay? I think dolphins have 1,650 grams, so they're smarter than we are.
Right.
So, the Anunnaki gods had developed, some of them, some very powerful, not only technologies, but powers, spiritual powers. And of course, some were more developed in those ways than others. So I agree with what your friend says. The shadow government is run by the reptilians, and there are greedy humans that are complicit, and there are also humans that have just been blackmailed or, brought into the fold through, threats or whatever. Or there's some that are just, intermediate souls and basically ego-based and selfish and think what's in it for them and so forth. So, and so the reptilians are different. They're a complicated subject. They don't have developed heart chakras. They have very developed genitalia kind of chakras and power centers and mental centers, but they're not love-based. There are, once in a long time, there will be actually a reptilian that becomes a spiritual master. And that's a very powerful, I've only met one of them. That's a very powerful thing to achieve, because their heart chakra is more shriveled.
Let me jump in. This is an important call. I'm on a hard network break, so let me take that break and let's finish this when we come back. Eric, can you hang on to?
Thank you. And I have one more question that's also important after we get back from the break, Jimmy.
Okay, let's do that. Tricia, are you cool for a few minutes of overtime?
Yeah, no, it's no problem at all, but I actually have some things I'd love to say to him about this.
Okay, we'll do it.
About his friend.
We'll do it right when we come back. Our guest tonight, Tricia McCannon. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. You guys stay right there.
and you are listening to my boy, Jimmy Church, on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will.
Angioprim can clean blocked arteries and improve blood flow in all parts of your body. Angioprim is liquid oral chelation. It's not new science. 50 years of research has gone into chelation, and now there's Angioprim. Easy, simple, liquid oral chelation. You take it with juice before breakfast and forget about it. Angioprim works fast, unlike old-fashioned chelation that takes hours. The first thing Angioprim users say is they have more energy, more strength, more endurance. Increased circulation and blood flow will make all your body parts work better. Log on now at angioprim.com to get more information on how you can get started and start feeling better and doing more. Lots more. Talk to a trained Angioprim consultant or go to angioprim.com for help. Call Angioprim toll-free at 877-882-7221. That's Angioprim at 877-882-7221. Get the facts about Angioprim. Begin living the life you want, doing the things you used to do again with Angioprim.
Hello, Fadernauts. Are you looking for the ultimate Bluetooth speaker system? Well, check this out. The Studio Dome surround sound system, featuring the Studio Dome 1 SD1 and the Studio Boombox SBB wireless Bluetooth speakers, is the perfect way to get surround sound without all of the cable headaches. With its own hard shell custom carrying case for taking your surround sound experience on the go. Each hard shell case comes packed with an SBB, 2 SD1s, cables, and power. It's just $99. And you use the promo code Jimmy, and you get yourself some free shipping. Once again, Studio Dome brings you the best deal on the net. Anywhere. Just go to the Studio Dome banner, JimmyChurchRadio.com, promo code Jimmy. Go Beckley Teppy.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way. KGRARadio.com.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
All right, welcome back to Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, Tricia McCannon. And right before the break, took a phone call from Eric, who had been in communication with someone who said she's Anunnaki and that she has information. And Eric had some questions about that. Tricia, let's try to pick up where we left off.
Yeah, what I was going to say is that obviously this girl is not she's probably not a physical Anunnaki. She's probably a human, Earth human, but she may very well be the reincarnation or of an Anunnaki who's chosen to come down and take a human birth.
Yes,
and
she is human, by the way. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but her picture on Twitter, this is very odd. Her eye pupils show a slit like a cross on her pupils, like the reptilian would have a cross up and down, for example. She has another cross that goes straight across. But she is human. She's a beautiful blonde woman with very unusual facial features.
Well, some years ago, I met a lovely woman on the speaking circuit. I think her name was Susan Ferguson. And she wrote a book, 2 or 3 books, about Inanna and the return of Inanna and so forth. And I remember I was at a radio show or television show. I think it was Strange Universe, and we were both being interviewed. This was in the 90s. And I walked by, and I knew she was an incarnation of Inanna that had come down to try to make some things right. And I said, "Hey, Inanna." She said, "Hey, Athena." I said, "Yeah, right."
Okay, right.
So, and let me just see that this is a lot of us have larger matrices. I mean, we are bigger than we can really imagine. And I don't mean this from the point of view of ego or it should go to our heads, because we all have to do the best we can with our human lives. But the Anunnaki were very karmically involved with this planet. And they made some mistakes. They did a lot that was good, a lot that was, I mean, think about it. All of the foundations of civilization we owe to them. Reading, writing, arithmetic, the humanities, philosophy, all that. And I think at a certain level they're very proud of us. But a lot of them have chosen to come back and take physical human incarnations here to see if they can be a part of this movement that all of us are part of. You are, Eric, Jimmy, the fellow that called in earlier. Everybody's listening. We're part of a movement where we're trying to enter the galactic community. And we can't do it if we are going to get our shotgun and say, you know, let's just shoot those things out of the sky like Bubba. You know, we're in the South. We know all about Bubba.
That's right. That's right.
So we can't, that's not going to work. We have to shift our paradigm to where we move out of fear and we move into recognizing that the same soul or the same spirit, maybe different souls, the same spirit is throughout the whole universe. And some species, just like our species, we go back and forth between being the best of the best, the most pure, the most beautiful, the most sacrificing, the most giving, the most amazing masters, to being the worst of the worst. And there are races like that. And we're a scary race for a lot of the other races because we're so unpredictable and violent and volatile and egotistical. And, I mean, we'd be pretty scary to come upon because all we keep doing is having these crazy wars and exploiting the land and the people. And, you know, what is it? Something like 93% of the wealth in the world belongs to 3% of the population. And then 97% of the world has the rest. I mean, that's just kind of crazy.
Yeah. I hear you.
One
last question. Okay, go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, one last, and this is part of my studies is I'm deeply affected by, and I won't go. All right. Bottom line is satanic ritual abuse, child pedophilia. It bothers me a tremendous amount, and I'm trying to understand if you would have any insights on where that evil comes from. Is that coming from a specific ET race? How do you imagine that people can behave and treat other human beings that way?
What has happened is the gift of sexuality is the opportunity that through the opening of the heart, love, we raise our kundalini, moving the energy up the triple circuit, the central nervous system and the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. That's the male and the female, and then the central path in between, the middle path, okay? So really what sex is supposed to be about is really this incredible, I mean, we're the only species on the planet that doesn't just mate for mating's sake. We can mate anytime, and that's because it's more than just having babies. It's about enlightenment through love and through merger and so forth. So the dark has taken the most sacred of all things and perverted it. Why? Because it short circuits our system so we can't become enlightened. And particularly when they do it with children, and I'm right there with you, Eric. I mean, I tell you, Athena, I just want to get out my machete and cut off all the appropriate parts for the kind of things that have been going on. I mean, I talk about this in The Return of the Divine Sophia and how it became, when the patriarchy suppressed the divine feminine, which exists in men and women. I mean, we have both inside of us. They threw us into such an imbalance. And, I mean, if you actually read the Old Testament, they're telling, according to the priest of Yahweh, whether this is true or not, they're saying, go into that village and kill every man, woman, chicken, pig, and goat, rape all the virgins, and kill everybody else. And take them hostage and have kids with them.
I mean, it's crazy. It's like, this is the Bible? Doesn't seem like a good moral guidelines to me. And there are people, especially in Muslim countries, that are living like that, where they're just completely oppressive. And this whole thing about how, the sins of the father get visited on the children. A lot of course, people who have pedophilia issues, they were wounded. They were the victims of that themselves. And so the conscious mind knows that it's wrong, but the subconscious has this program that says, this is what love looks like. And, of course, that's not what love looks like at all. It doesn't look like, abuse. But the reason behind it, from the point of view of the dark, is it's a perversion of the energy that would allow us to come to enlightenment through love and oneness of and knowledge of our own divine nature, and it would free us from the controls. I mean, if the church, if the mosque, if the temples, if all these religions, which, let me say, have wonderful people in them and do some wonderful things, but if they would teach spiritual freedom in this lifetime, personal empowerment through service and the heart, imagine if they taught sacred sexuality and learning to raise your kundalini. I mean, Jesus tells us the kingdom of heaven is within. You don't have to look outside. You don't have to sign up for something. You don't have to pay your dues. You can, of course you can contribute if you wish to something healthy. But the sexuality piece that you mentioned, Eric, is the worst perversion, and basically it's become a sickness. The statistics are 1 in every 3 girls and 1 in every 7 boys, and those statistics are from 1985. So that it's probably 1 in every 2 girls and 1 in every 3 boys.
There you go, Eric.
I appreciate you taking the time to share that. I know Jimmy's got other callers, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric.
Eric, thank you for your question.
Have a good night.
Yeah,
right there with you.
Tricia, before and thank you for hanging on. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about is the what seems to be the level of awareness around the world with ET, with aliens, with the acceptance that we're not alone in the universe, and then you combine that with John Podesta and Hillary and Obama and Bill going on Jimmy Kimmel and this discussion that seems to be happening now across the board through not only popular culture but in politics too as well. Is there, not to use that nasty word of disclosure, but is there something going on right now with this communication about ET and alien contact?
Yeah, I think this has basically been the power elite that's, that those families that have, and the reptilians that have invaded those families, all this, because they haven't opened their heart chakras, they can't graduate to the next level. That's what is required is the, surrender of the personal egoic power, the little self, to the higher self in order to move to the next dimensional level.
Right.
So if they can't go, they want to keep everybody from going. So during the Bush administration, as you know, that whole, or you may or may not know, but my guess is the 9/11 thing was basically artificially constructed, and it was set up in order to, like Pearl Harbor, to incite us to say, I'm mad as hell and I'm not taking it anymore, and let's go after, who? Saddam Hussein? No, it's bin Laden. We switched countries, we switched targets, all that. We went after the oil. So motivated, we can say, on one hand, by money, power, greed, and oil. And all that happened, in fact, right before there was this huge public disclosure that was supposed to be made. And as you may remember, there was a Los Angeles Times reporter, I want to say Philip White, but I can't swear that was his name, who was very, grounded, hardcore, didn't believe in ETs, none of that. Well, he was taken on board a ship in the year or two prior to the 9/11 incident. And he met many statesmen, scientists, government people, all these that were being prepped around the world to help with the announcement, and there was going to be a landing actually in the Midwest. Well, all this was going to be revealed. And this was due to happen about a week, a world announcement after 9/11. So 9/11 did a lot of things. It threw the world into fear. It crashed the stock markets. It plunged everybody into war mentality and fear mentality. It was a masterful manipulation by the dark forces. And it legitimized all sorts of things like the Patriot Act and giving away our freedoms in the name of, security. And, it just gave the power elite an excuse to control everybody a million times more. And so they threw us so much in debt. And I had predicted this when Bush was running. I said, if you look at his track record, his grandfather was the largest contributor to the Nazi war party in America. His father was the head of the CIA. He himself has bankrupted every single company he's ever owned. He couldn't even find oil in Texas. And so he's going to bankrupt this country. Well, of course, Cheney, I'm sure, was running things behind the scenes. And they basically put us back into the war mentality, into the control mentality, into the fear-based mentality, as opposed to having a whole other paradigm come in with sort of us being invited to enter the galactic family and the world moving into a different consciousness. Obama and Hillary and all these guys have been on such a financially fragile teeter-totter edge for the whole 8 years of Obama's administration that it was not feasible to make this announcement, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 7 years ago. We were all holding our breath to see if our economy was going to crash and burn. And, as America goes, who knows what will happen to the rest of the world. So we may now be in a better position, but it certainly depends. If Donald Trump gets in office, do we really think that we're going to have the finesse of galactic negotiations when we can't even have the finesse of human, relations with other people because we're so busy calling them names? I don't think so. So a lot's going to ride on this election in terms of the attitude of the world in general. If we're fighting each other and we're just busy calling names and never taking any responsibility or emotionally growing up to become mature, which Donald Trump is obviously brilliant and charismatic and saying some remarkably insightful things that we should maybe think about, but he's clearly like a bull in a china shop. And he's adversarial and he's egotistical. So he's not the kind of person we need as a president, even though we might certainly take some of his ideas into consideration.
That's what soul decides to come back as Donald Trump?
I
How does that happen?
Certainly he's not beholden to any other people for his money, and that's, of course, very appealing. And he is saying some things that a lot of us think. For example, yes, we should have freedom of religion, but we should not have any religion that forces their religion down everybody else's throat or blows them up. Okay? It seems like every religion goes through some kind of a phase. In the beginning, we have the beauty and the wonder and the mysticism of the original founder. Then we have the people running around trying to follow the master and repeat his words, and then when the master dies, try to get it right. And then you have politically minded people, militarily minded people, money minded people that come in and say, hey, let's set this up as an organization and figure out how we can perpetuate it. And in the process of doing that, they establish rules and regulations, and then anybody that doesn't obey them, they go out and kill them. And then they become more and more and more suppressive. Well, the Catholic Church did the same thing during the 6 centuries of the Inquisition. Absolutely. The Muslims seem to be in that crazy mode now. The Jews were in it back, there from about, whatever, if you believe the Bible, from the time that Moses left for, 1,000 years or so.
Right.
You know, if you don't believe the Bible that they went and killed every man, woman, chicken, pig, and goat in all the villages that were peaceful around them in Cana, and by the way, stole lots of their literature, poetry, songs, music, and culture, and claimed it was their own. If you don't believe that, then it would have started when the priest of Yahweh really took over after the Babylon exile was over. Okay, and then they kind of made up their own story. Like, they didn't even have the story of the Garden of Eden or the flood until they stayed in Babylon, and they got that from the Enamud Elish, which is a, Sumerian Chaldean story, and from the Atrahasis, the story of the flood and Noah. It wasn't Noah, by the way, it was a different name, but, they took it and adapted it. And they changed certain things to suit themselves. Like, instead of saying men and women were created together, which is how the Anunnaki did create them, they said man first, and he's the dominant guy, and then we got the rib, and then the woman, and she better serve him. So, it's a political agenda.
What are you going to be speaking on at the New Living Expo?
I think I'm doing a tour de force of ancient artifacts and spaceships and current sightings, including some amazing ships that are organic ships that you have to use your mind to interface with, some pyramid ships that are quite extraordinary that appeared over China and Taiwan, some of the cloaking devices that they've been using. So it's just going to be a tour de force of the ETs, and a lot of actually bodies of real aliens that have been found. So, I was a commercial photographer and graphic designer, so my slideshows are really beautiful and very rich and very well researched. So it will be a treat, and I'm going to probably show some of that, but I may show more giants and even fairies at the conference in June, the Contact in the Desert, because this is another thing. As the frequency of the Earth is rising, we're able to begin to perceive some of the beings that our ancestors perceived that we were told was all fiction, whether you call them orbs or you see fairies or they're rods, or there's all these different versions of things, peculiarities that we're now picking up on cameras that our ancestors have talked about for, millennia. And so I'll be showing photographs of giants that are 15, 20, 25, and even 30 feet tall, and they're the actual skeletal remains that have been found in these archaeological digs around the world that have been primarily covered up by the media.
I can't wait to see both presentations, and all of your books are on your website. And for everybody, just click on Tricia's name on jimmychurchradio.com. It'll take you right there, and everything is there. So I want to, again, thank you so much, Tricia, for hanging out for overtime and an absolute fascinating conversation. We're going to get you back because we still didn't talk about the little baby Jesus. Or Mary Magdalene.
Those lost years of Jesus, and also Mary Magdalene. All those stories in those two books about Jesus and the return of the Divine Sophia. But this has been such a pleasure, Jimmy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tricia, and keep rolling that rock uphill. Have a great rest of your evening. I know you had a long weekend. Go get some rest, and thank you so much.
Okay, speak with you soon.
Thank you so much. Tricia McCannon, everybody. Just go to jimmychurchradio.com. You can click on her name right there. All of her books are there, and her speaking schedule. Everything is there. Thank you so much, Tricia. Absolutely fascinating conversation tonight. And now, before I get out of here, a couple of things that I need to share with you really quick. Saudi Arabia has proposed a NATO-like alliance of dozens of Muslim-majority countries to take on a perceived terror threat. That's right. The announcement comes days after 21 countries conducted massive military exercises in northern Saudi Arabia, something that you have not heard about yet. Check this out. This included drills for how to respond to a potential terror attack. 21 countries in northern Saudi Arabia. The alliance would be used to fight against threats like ISIS. And Pakistan has been made responsible for organizing the framework for the military alliance. Absolutely fascinating. More on this as it comes together. Check this out. A senior Air Force general who ran the aerial campaign against ISIS has been fired from his job and will retire after an investigation found that he had unprofessional relationships with a lower-ranking female officer. The Air Force said this past weekend that Lieutenant General John Hesterman, the Assistant Vice Chief of Staff, was found guilty of misconduct for emails he exchanged with an Air Force lieutenant colonel between March 2010 and May 2011, 5 years ago. The investigation found that emails included language that was sexually suggestive in places and romantic in other places, end quote. One of Hesterman's emails signed off with, "Much love." And in another, he talked about wanting to see her, saying, and I'm quoting here, "I've missed you, my lovely girl," end quote. Hesterman told investigators that he didn't recall some of the exchanges and that he didn't remember being all that friendly. The Air Force said the investigation did not recover any additional misconduct by Hesterman, but he will retire. Unbelievable. New images from the Hubble Space Telescope show a cluster of 9 monster stars, each one with more than 100 times more massive than our own sun. One of them is the previously discovered R13 6A1, which is the most massive luminous star in the known universe. According to a statement from the European Space Agency, which operates the telescope with NASA, says that these 9 stars outshine the sun by a factor of, wait for it, 30 million. In addition to those 9 headliners, the young star cluster R136, located about 170,000 light years from Earth in the Tarantula Nebula, also contains dozens of stars of at least 50 solar masses. You should see the images. If you go to our Facebook page, you can check it out there. Absolutely amazing. And finally, a New York State resident was sentenced last Thursday to 22 and a half years in prison for trying to recruit fighters to join ISIS in Syria, the longest prison term handed out yet to an American convicted of supporting ISIS. Mufid Elfgay, 32, of Rochester, was sentenced by U.S. District Judge Elizabeth Wolford of the Western District of New York. Now, the district's U.S. Attorney, William Hatchell, called Elfgay one of the first ISIS recruiters ever captured. A North Carolina federal judge last May issued the second largest sentence, 20 years and 3 months in prison, for possessing a firearm and material support to ISIS. That's it. I'm out of here. I'll see you guys tomorrow night. Brian Forster's going to be here live from Peru. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. Our executive producer is the one and only Rita Kamarian. Show is produced by Hilton J. Paul, Mark D. Kovar, LJ3, Renee, Mark Dunbar, Jonas. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Bob. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vito, and Mark D. Kovar. Fady by Dale. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy. SpaceboyMusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. Syndication is KGRA The Planet. Thank you to everyone who called in tonight. Thank you to Tricia McCannon. Absolutely fascinating conversation. We'll have her back real soon. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2016 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. I want everybody to be safe. Go Beckley Tepe.